Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga. Chapter 2067. New White River City. Starmoon Kingdom. White River City. When Xueqi returned to White River City, he discovered that the city had undergone massive changes while he had been gone. He had only been away for 2 weeks or so, yet experts from well-known adventurer teams now crowded the streets. Even the weakest among these experts was level 63, tier 2, and they all wore level 60 secret silver equipment. It almost seemed as if such equipment had become widely available, something so common that it wasn't worth players' attention. Bronze mounts were also a common sight in the city now. Occasionally, Xueqi even noticed players atop mysterious iron mounts. White River City had become almost as prosperous as an empire's imperial capital. Xueqi had very nearly failed to recognize the city due to these massive changes. Moreover, Starmoon Kingdom's guards used to protect the city, but now, guards from other nations patrolled its streets. Xueqi even spotted players from multiple foreign first-rate guilds as he walked through the city, including a few peak experts from these guilds. Xueqi wasn't the only player to notice these experts. Players who visited White River City for the first time were just as shocked. Amazing! Isn't that player wearing the Dawnlight set for Berserkers? Look at that elementalist. He's wearing the level 60 fine gold ranked Wind Spirit set. I've heard that the set only drops from level 60, 100-man Hell Mode team dungeons. So, this is White River City? Isn't the equipment these players are wearing here a little too amazing? I have only seen a handful of people with level 60 fine gold set equipment in the Black Dragon Empire's Black Dragon City. How are there so many people with that kind of equipment here? The players visiting White River City for the first time couldn't help but asp when they saw the well-equipped experts wandering the city. But the original residents merely spared these experts an indifferent glance. White River City had been developing too quickly, practically every day, and this was no longer an unusual sight. The city's rapid changes were all due to the auction arena system's activation. As the only NPC city in Starmoon Kingdom and the neighboring kingdoms to have the auction arena system, White River City had instantly become the heart of these kingdoms. The various major powers swarmed to the city in an attempt to compete for control of it. Hence, the quantity and quality of the experts here had skyrocketed. The auction arena system also provided a development opportunity for merchant and independent players, who had come running to the city, as well. As a result, White River City had grown into a large-scale NPC city with a player population exceeding 20 million. It also had more powers than any other NPC city in Starmoon Kingdom and its several neighbors. As for weapons and equipment, even the level 60 secret silver rank, which was rare in other cities, was almost a standard in White River City. Many experts even wore level 60 fine gold equipment. At this point, only level 60 dark gold equipment could draw attention in White River City. Unlike White River City's newest players, the city's original residents paid no attention to the wandering experts and their equipment as they rested and chatted by the roadside. Instead, they were focused on their discussions over the fight for White River City. The official struggle for White River City is going to start in 2 days. Independent players like us will get to enjoy a good show. I've heard that there are already 4 superpowers fighting for supremacy. I wonder how Zero Wing will hold its position? If Zero Wing loses White River City, all of its investments in the city will go to waste. Why are we even talking about this? Zero Wing can't hold the city. One of those superpowers will take it in the end. The auction arena's competition isn't like field combat. Players can't rely on tools in the auction arena. Participants will have to rely on powerful experts and resources to win it. Zero Wing is much weaker than a superpower in this regard, especially when it comes to the number of peak experts it has. Zero Wing has no chance against the participating superpowers. I guess you're right. If Zero Wing had another 6 months, it might have enough resources and experts to contend with superpowers. Unfortunately, White River City has been developing too fast. It was actually one of the first NPCs to get promoted. If it had been a part of the 2nd or 3rd batch to get an auction arena, Zero Wing wouldn't have had any issues securing its hold over the city. Nowadays, nothing grabbed players' attention than the fight for White River City in the Starmoon Kingdom. Not only would the upcoming fight determine who controlled the city, but it was also the first time these major powers seriously clashed. The auction arena also presented an opportunity for independent players to display their skills in front of these powers in hopes of reaching greater heights. While this sounded like a joke, it was the best way to become famous overnight. Now that God's domain had more influence in the real world, more corporations invested in the game, and they all needed talented experts to work for them. If one could show off in the auction arena, one of the various superpowers might extend an olive branch. As expected of one of the first promoted NPC cities, its development speed and competition truly are frightening. Xueqi could not help his surprise as he noticed various guild players wandering the city streets. He had seen more than 30 second-rate guilds and as many as 10 first-rate guilds since his return to White River City. Not even imperial capitals had this many guilds, yet this was only what he saw on the surface. Who knew how many more powers lurked in the city in secret? In the past, Shadow hadn't had any connection to the first wave of promoted NPC cities. At the time, Shadow had already been struggling for its survival in God's domain, and the guild had expended all of its available resources just to secure leveling spots and raid dungeons for its members' equipment. How could it have had the strength to compete for a major NPC city? Xueqi had only heard stories of how powerful the various entities participating in the auction arena's competition were, and the competition's intensity. He hadn't actually gotten a realistic sense of how extraordinary the competitions had actually been. Now that he was a participant, he couldn't help his rueful sigh. Xueqi returned to Zero Wing's residence to organize the materials he had obtained during his trial. However, as he entered the guild hall, Xueqi noticed that the hall's atmosphere was odd. He could sense a depressing energy throughout the building, and the number of experts in the hall had visibly decreased. Yulan, did something happen? What's with the strange atmosphere? Xueqi asked Yulan, who currently sorted through the guild members' information. Guild leader, you're back. Yulan's face lit with joy when she saw Xueqi, but then she frowned and said, while you've been gone, Twilight Echo's survival in the Storm Empire has become unsure. Aqua Rose doesn't want to see the destruction of her family's guild and doesn't want to implicate Zero Wing, so she has temporarily resigned as vice guild leader to help Twilight Echo under her own name. Many of the players that were originally from Twilight Echo have gone with her. I tried to contact you about this, but I couldn't get through to you. Twilight Echo is having an existential crisis? Xueqi was surprised to hear the news. What happened? According to what we know, it seems that Nature Hall is trying to monopolize the Storm Empire and wants every guild in the area to submit as a subordinate. Since Twilight Echo refuses to submit, it tried to move out of the Empire, but Nature Hall refuses to let the guild get out safely and has threatened to remove Twilight Guild from God's domain. Thus, the guild is in danger of perishing, Yulan explained. I see. Once he had a general understanding of the situation, Xueqi revealed a bitter smile and wondered aloud, is Zero Wing really that unreliable? Twilight Echo was everything to Aqua Rose's family. Although she had broken away from her family's influence to develop independently, if Twilight Echo perished, so would Aqua Rose's family. Naturally, she couldn't just sit by and watch. However, Nature Hall was not the first-rate guild it had been in the past. It had secured major corporations' investments and not long ago, had successfully removed a super first-rate guild from the Storm Empire. Since it had a long time to develop after that incident, it was easy to imagine how powerful Nature Hall had become. Considering Zero Wing's current problems, if Aqua Rose used her identity as one of Zero Wing's vice guild leaders to help Twilight Echo, Nature Hall would turn its ire on Zero Wing, increasing its number of enemies. Guild leader, should we send some people to help her? Yulan asked. Of course we should. Not only are we going to send some of our people, but I also want you to send someone to inform Nature Hall that Twilight Echo is under Zero Wing's protection. Chapter 2068. Zero Wing's Protection. Storm Empire, Nether Mine. The Storm Empire was located in a mountainous region, and various ore veins were common around the empire. As a result, the empire had become famous as an ore producer on the God's Domain continent. Meanwhile, the empire possessed the Nether Mine on one of its borders, which bathed in nether energy all year round. Because nether energy increased players' stamina consumption several-fold, and the mountains around the mine were home to level 70 and above demonic beasts, players were rarely interested in grinding and leveling in the area. However, several thousand players had gathered near one of the creeks between the two mountains. The lowest leveled of these players was level 62, and all of them would be considered experts. Only, these several thousand experts were members of two groups, one with fewer than 400 players, and the other with nearly 3,000. If the Storm Empire's players were present, they'd be shocked. The smaller group consisted of Twilight Echo's core members, the pillars that supported the guild. Roughly 30 of them were top-ranked experts in the Storm Empire, and to ordinary players, they were unreachable. The strongest of these experts had to be Dark Wave, Twilight Echo's current guild leader and a player that ranked among the top 10 within his class. Many powers operated in the Storm Empire, and its player population was even more frightening. Ranking among the top 10 on one's class ranking list was an impressive feat. Dark Wave could easily rank among the top 20 or 30 in any kingdom's overall combat power ranking. Such a group of experts shouldn't even fear an army of 10,000 elite players, but despite facing a legion of less than 3,000, Twilight Echo's core members wore grim expressions. Their eyes even held traces of fear. To think Nature Hall would send even you, Vice Guild Leader Owl, to greet us. Your guild must think highly of us, Dark Wave commented to the robust, bear-like man carrying 2 epic-ranked one-handed axes, fear flashing in his eyes. Owl Life had only been an ordinary expert, but after joining God's domain, he had repeatedly challenged the game's experts, growing stronger at a ridiculous rate. In the end, he had grown from an unknown player into one of the Storm Empire's famous experts. He then caught Nature Hall's attention, and the guild recruited him. After joining Nature Hall, Owl Life's development speed skyrocketed, and he quickly became one of the guild's capable generals. When the super first-rate guild, 9-star family had operated in the Storm Empire, Owl Life had fought and defeated an army of its peak experts. He had even single-handedly killed 5 peak experts while leading a 5,000-man team to capture one of the super first-rate guild's towns. That battle had shaken the Empire and made Owl Life famous. Eventually, Owl Life had become one of Nature Hall's vice guild leaders. Although Dark Wave ranked among the top 10 in his own class within the Empire, Owl Life ranked among the top 10 in the overall rankings. While the difference might not seem major, it was like the difference between a candle flame and a roaring bonfire. If Owl Life wanted to, he could kill every Twilight Echo expert present. Guild Leader Dark Wave, I assume you know Nature Hall's stance on this since I've made the trip here. You people from Twilight Echo should stop deluding yourselves, Owl Life said with a commanding tone, smiling at Dark Wave. Twilight Echo has already conceded every high-resource location available. We have even moved to this remote map to grind. We already intend to give up on developing in the Storm Empire. What more do you people want? Dark Wave said as he tightened his grip on his saber, his expression darkening in frustration. The guild leader sent me to knock some sense into you, Owl Life said, chuckling. Either submit or we will remove you from God's domain permanently. There is no third option. Don't think that we will let you continue to develop just because you fled to this remote location. Dark Wave's frown deepened. Nobody could have expected the competition between the various powers would become so intense after the auction arena's activation. To strengthen its hold on the Storm Empire, Nature Hall had begun an all-out war against the Empire's powers, eradicating any that opposed it. Guild Leader, why don't we just fight them? That's right. If we have to go down, we'll take them with us. Twilight Echo's experts prepared themselves for a desperate battle in response to Nature Hall's determination to drive them into a corner. You want to suffer mutual destruction? Do you really think that you're capable of that? Owl Life could not help but laugh when he heard Twilight Echo's members. Owl Life's words incensed Twilight Echo's members further. Only Dark Wave remained silent. He had nothing to offer in rebuttal. His silence wasn't due to a lack of courage, but because Owl Life spoke the truth. No one in the guild had a better idea than he of how powerful the players who ranked among the top 10 on the Empire's overall combat power rankings were. It was no exaggeration to consider these players humanoid monsters. We don't have any other choice. Once the battle begins, I'll try to pin down Owl Life for as long as I can. Everyone else, split up and run. Dark Wave said. He then turned to Aqua Rose who stood beside him, and said, Aqua, you've seen it for yourself now. Your return can't solve this matter. You need to try to escape this. Don't let Twilight Echo ruin your future. As Aqua Rose's fourth uncle, he was grateful that his niece had returned to help the family's guild. Unfortunately, she couldn't change anything. After seeing how Nature Hall treated Twilight Echo, he knew that if any other superpower interfered, Nature Hall would make his guild suffer for it. Dark Wave knew that Zero Wing, Aqua Rose's guild, had been developing quite well recently and was now better off than Twilight Echo. Helping Twilight Echo wasn't worth Aqua Rose losing her opportunity in Zero Wing. Aqua Rose bowed her head and gritted her teeth in frustration. She had never expected Nature Hall to be so intent on cornering Twilight Echo. If she hadn't returned most of her weapons and equipment to Zero Wing's guild warehouse before leaving, she might have been able to fight Owllife and allow more of Twilight Echo's members to escape. You want to flee? Are you even strong enough for that? Owllife ridiculed, sneering at the serious expressions on Twilight Echo's members. However, just before a fight broke out, 1,000 players ran into the valley. An elegant girl in beautiful mage robes, looking like a fairy, led the force, and many of the players in the valley couldn't help but stare. Among the 1,000 new arrivals, the lowest-leveled player was 63, while most were level 64. The weakest piece of equipment these players wore was level 60 secret silver rank. Many of these players even wore level 60 fine gold and dark gold equipment. Both Nature Hall and Twilight Echo's members watched these newcomers with envy. However, the most noticeable aspect of these players was their sharp auras. They clearly weren't ordinary experts. Who are you? Can't you see that Nature Hall is busy here? If you don't want any trouble, leave immediately. Owllife warned the approaching 1,000-man legion. Normally, he would have already commanded his subordinates to eliminate any intruders. But this 1,000-man legion clearly wasn't a normal force. Even his players would suffer if they attacked these new arrivals without care. Us? We're from Zero Wing, Violet Cloud said with a faint smile. Zero Wing? Isn't that a guild from Starmoon Kingdom? Owllife faintly recalled such a guild, and from what he could remember, Zero Wing had been developing excellently recently. He then asked, "Why have you come here?" "We have orders from our guild leader to inform Nature Hall that Twilight Echo is under Zero Wing's protection," Violet Cloud calmly replied. Chapter 2069. Defeating Nature Hall in 2 moves. Zero Wing wants to protect Twilight Echo. Nature Hall's members were stunned when they heard Violet Cloud's announcement. Twilight Echo's members were just as dumbfounded. Nature Hall was akin to the Storm Empire's emperor. It had already grown powerful enough to demand respect from superguilds, yet Zero Wing, which was barely on par with a first-rate guild, intended to oppose Nature Hall. The guild leader plans to interfere? When Aqua Rose saw the 1,000-man legion from Zero Wing, excitement and worry flashed in her eyes. She hadn't had a specific understanding of Nature Hall before her return to the Storm Empire, but it wasn't long before she realized that Nature Hall shouldn't be provoked. Nature Hall's foundations were beyond her imagination. The guild already had more than 100 peak experts and tens of thousands of expert members. With so many experts, Nature Hall's rule in the Storm Empire was unshakable. How arrogant! This is Nature Hall's territory. Do you think that a few words will protect Twilight Echo? Owllife roared in anger. Not even your ally, the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion, would dare to act so pompously before Nature Hall. Vice Guild Leader, what's the point of wasting words on them? Since these ignorant players dare to act so insolently before our guild, we should get rid of them, here and now. That's right. Let's teach these country bumpkins the difference between a kingdom's overlord and an empire's. We'll show them how little they matter in the Storm Empire. Nature Hall's members voiced their outrage over Violet Cloud's declaration, even offering to teach Zero Wing's members a lesson. We are only here to give you notice. Your reply is irrelevant, Violet Cloud calmly responded. If you don't have any more questions, we'll be escorting Twilight Echo's members away now. The valley fell silent when Violet Cloud finished speaking. Even Dark Wave, Twilight Echo's guild leader, could not help but gasp at the girl's comment. He could not understand just what gave Zero Wing the confidence to provoke the Storm Empire's emperor. This is bad. Anxiously, Dark Wave turned to look at Aqua Rose and said, Aqua, you need to stop them. If this gets out of hand, Zero Wing will be doomed. Aqua Rose nodded, but although she wanted to contact Violet Cloud, Owllife didn't give her the chance to do so. Bastards! Everyone, heed my command and eliminate these lowlifes. Owllife snarled as he pointed at Violet Cloud. The chilling gaze he aimed at the young woman even caused the experts around him to shudder. A little over half of Nature Hall's forces split away from surrounding Twilight Echo's team and charged at Zero Wing's 1,000-man team, their battle cries echoing throughout the valley. Nature Hall's members moved like well-trained soldiers. Not only were they fast, but they were perfectly in sync with each other. 18 shield warriors and guardian knights moved to the forefront, radiating a silver glow as divine runes covered their bodies. They all had more than 200,000 HP, and their auras resembled that of ancient war gods. So strong! Twilight Echo's members lost their composure when they saw this. Every member of Twilight Echo's team was an expert. They could easily gauge an opponent's strength based on their aura. The 18 MTs radiated an intensely dangerous feeling, and Twilight Echo's members knew that in a one-on-one, these MTs would blow them away. Not even their guild leader, Dark Wave, could necessarily stop these MTs' assault, even with an active life-saving skill. So, this is Nature Hall's Silverlight Battle Array? Dark Wave could not help but gasp when he saw the MT's silver glow. The Silverlight Battle Array was well known in the Storm Empire. Nature Hall had relied on this battle array to defeat its first-rate guild when it had still been weaker than 9-star family. He had only ever witnessed the Silverlight Battle Array in videos before, and now that he got to see it in person, the increased strength, HP, and speed were beyond his expectations. It was no wonder why Nature Hall didn't fear other superpowers. Nobody can stop our guild's Silverlight Battle Array. Let's tear apart these zero-wing players. The Nature Hall players that still surrounded Twilight Echo's members laughed as their companions activated the battle array. The Silverlight Battle Array allowed 18 players to link together. Not only could they share the incoming damage, but their strength, HPs, movement speed, and attack speed increased by 30% as well. Most importantly, they could share their senses through the battle array. However, before the 18 MTs reached Zero Wing's team and tore apart its defensive line, Violet Cloud, who stood among her players, waved her staff. Dimensional Fracture. Space tore before Violet Cloud, rapidly extending toward Nature Hall's members. Although the spatial tear looked fine and weak, it felt like the roar of an ancient behemoth. The sky and the earth trembled at its might. Dodge it! Owllife shouted, panicking. Unfortunately, the spatial tear grew too quickly for his warning to be of any use. Crack! The sound of shattering glass shook the valley as the spatial tear reached Nature Hall's MTs, who failed to react in time. Like a hot knife through butter, the spatial tear cut through the 18 MTs, their bisected forms falling to the ground. Nature Hall's rear-line healers had no time to cast a healing spell before their MTs lost the last of their HPs. Moreover, the spatial tear didn't stop with the 18 linked MTs, reaping the lives of players standing dozens of yards away. Do you still wish to fight us? Violet Cloud asked as she retracted her staff and gazed upon Nature Hall's members. With just one move, Violet Cloud had killed over 200 experts. Her indifferent tone suggested that she didn't consider the act significant, and Nature Hall survivors shuddered in fear. You merely have a powerful spell. Do you really think that none of us can take you down? Rage flared in Owllife's eyes as he glared at Violet Cloud. While he didn't particularly mind the deaths of 200-plus guild experts, he minded losing the 18 MTs that could utilize the Silverlight Battle Array. The guild had carefully nurtured all of those players, and every one of them was very close to reaching the refinement realm. With the Silverlight Battle Array, each of those players had the combat power to surpass ordinary refinement realm experts. Losing a level might not impact their progress over much, but the loss of their weapons and equipment definitely would. They would need a lot of time to recover the items. Owllife's body transformed into a blur as he dashed toward Violet Cloud like a vicious gale. Crap! Owllife is attacking. Dark waves darkened as he watched Owllife make his move. Owllife wasn't like the 18 MTs that had died. With his weapons, equipment, and combat standards, he ranked at the very top of the Storm Empire. His 2 one-handed axes were even epic set weapons. He could easily repel a great lord of the same level, and the valley's narrow terrain gave him the perfect battlefield. If Owllife reached Zero Wing's team, disaster would ensue. In less than 10 seconds, Owllife arrived before Zero Wing's members. Although Zero Wing's ranged experts bombarded him with attacks, he effortlessly dodged or blocked the incoming spells and arrows. None of the attacks managed to reach him. As they watched, Nature Hall's players felt their blood boil with excitement. Ha ha ha! The Vice Guild leader is finally making a move. Zero Wing's members are dead for sure. However, as Nature Hall's members expected to see Owllife throw Zero Wing's members into the air, Violet Cloud moved again. Like her previous attack, she lightly waved Death Sigh and manifested multiple magic arrays around her. Are you kidding me? Both Nature Hall and Twilight Echo's members were stunned. Violet Cloud had called forth 200 magic arrays, a blade of darkness forming before each array. Go! Violet Cloud shouted. Like raindrops, these 200 blades of darkness descended on Owl Life, all under Violet Cloud's control. They were not magical projectiles that could only move in a straight line. Burial Flower. Even Owl Life frowned as he watched the 200 blades of darkness fly toward him like lively sprites. He immediately activated his Epic Axe's active skill, and a gigantic flower formed beneath his feet. 12 flower petals circled Owl Life, each carrying 100% of his strength. The petals acted like MT's shields. Unless Violet Cloud's attacks had higher strength than he did, they wouldn't break through Burial Flower's defenses. Burial Flower formed a nearly invincible barrier around him. Following which, Owl Life charged toward Violet Cloud. However, the hammering sounds the blades of darkness made as they collided with Burial Flower's petals changed Owl Life's expression. Burial Flower's petals, which contained 100% of his strength, couldn't withstand the blades of shadow. The petals barely deflected the attacks and altered their trajectory. Against 200 blades of darkness, Owl Life's Burial Flower and Epic Axes seemed like paper tigers. Even though he fought with everything he had and fully displayed his Void Realm combat standards, he could only dodge or block a fraction of Violet Cloud's attack. In the blink of an eye, the blades of darkness slid through Owl Life's body, plundering the Berserker's HP. Owl Life, one of the Storm Empire's top 10 experts, had been defeated. Chapter 2070, Powerful Zero Wing. He died. Owl Life's been killed in one move. Nature Hall and Twilight Echoes members gaped in shock after witnessing Owl Life's death, unable to believe their eyes. However, not only did the man's corpse lie before them, but his trademark weapons, the burial axes, rested next to his body. Aqua, your guild's experts are quite strong. Is that girl your guild's #1 expert? Dark Wave asked his niece, his eyes glued on Violet Cloud. He had known that Zero Wing had been developing impressively, but he hadn't thought it had become this strong. Violet Cloud's gaze remained indifferent even after killing Owl Life, as if she had casually slain a common monster she had randomly come across. Someone actually treated Owl Life, one of Nature Hall's vice guild leaders, like a common monster, killing him as if swatting a fly. If news of this spread, it would shake the very core of the Storm Empire. No, Violet doesn't rank #1 in the guild, but she should stand among the top 5. Only, Aqua Rose stopped herself, watching Violet Cloud in confusion. She was very familiar with Violet Cloud's standards. Like her, the girl was a refinement realm expert. However, Violet had achieved more in the refinement realm than she had. Although if it came down to a fight, and their levels and equipment were equal, she could fight Violet Cloud to a standstill with her sea god's legacy. If the battle happened at sea, she'd whined by a landslide. If Aqua Rose had to fight a peak expert like Owl Life, even with all of her epic equipment, she'd have a very hard time defeating him. As for killing Owl Life in one move, she simply wasn't capable of the feat. The equipment that the various large guilds' peak experts improved as time passed. Yet for some reason, Violet Cloud had killed Owl Life instantly. Moreover, she had accomplished the feat effortlessly. No matter how Aqua Rose considered the situation, she couldn't figure how Violet Cloud had done it. However, Aqua Rose didn't know that Xueqi had given Violet Cloud the elemental bloodline after his return from the ancient god's maze, and due to the advanced bloodline, Violet Cloud's basic attributes had skyrocketed. With her massive basic attribute advantage, it was only natural that she had slain Owl Life like a common monster. She's only in the top 5 with that kind of strength? Dark Wave stared at his niece in shock. He no longer dared to imagine how powerful Zero Wing truly was. Nature Hall likely had less than a handful of experts that could kill Owl Life instantly, yet a non-superpower like Zero Wing had 4 more of these experts. Meanwhile, Nature Hall's members panicked after watching Owl Life die. Like frightened birds, they scattered and fled from the battlefield, none of them daring to fight any of Zero Wing's members. What a joke! Both Owl Life and the 18 Silverlight Battle Array MTs had been defeated in a single move each. They weren't fools. Now that they knew they were no match for Zero Wing, they wouldn't stay and fight. Doing so would be nothing more than suicide. Once Nature Hall's members fled, Violet Cloud turned her attention away and approached Aqua Rose. Big Sis Aqua, here are the items you stored in the guild warehouse, Violet Cloud told Aqua Rose, who wore a hesitant expression. After trading the equipment, she said, "Ah, Right, guild leader asked me to tell you this. Don't hold back. The guild has your back. Guild leader. For a moment, various emotions overwhelmed Aqua Rose. When Twilight Echo's members heard Violet Cloud's message for her comrade, they couldn't help their envy. A large guild like Zero Wing was actually willing to start an all-out war with a superpower to support one of its guild members. They had never even dared to imagine such a thing in the virtual gaming world. If they could join such a wonderful guild, what more could they possibly ask for? Once Aqua Rose regained her composure and re-equipped her weapons and equipment, her change stupefied Twilight Echo's members. She had already felt incredibly powerful, but after replacing her weapons and equipment, she felt like a butterfly breaking out of its cocoon. Not only did she look beautiful, but she also radiated an intensely powerful aura. Although they couldn't tell the quality of her items since she had hidden the glow effects, her aura was even stronger than Dark Wave and Owl Life's. So, this is the guild Aqua joined? Dark Wave's shock was even greater than when he had watched Owl Life die. The fact that Violet Cloud had killed Owl Life made it clear that Zero Wing had its own capable experts, but the equipment that had instantly elevated Aqua Rose's combat power, which could now rival Owl Life's, had an entirely different meaning. Let's leave this place and return to Windy City. Now that we've killed one of Nature Hall's vice guild leaders, Nature Hall won't let this matter rest, Aqua Rose said as she glanced at Owl Life's corpse. A vice guild leader was one of a guild's public faces. If they did not handle this incident's aftermath properly, Twilight Echo would have a difficult time leaving the Storm Empire. Rest assured, Big Sis Aqua. The guild leader has led a group to Storm City to discuss the situation with Nature Hall. I believe he will settle this matter very quickly, Violet Cloud said, giggling. What? They went to meet Nature Hall. Dark Wave nearly jumped up in shock. Are they tired of living? Although Owl Life was only Nature Hall's 8th Vice Guild leader, one of the lowest-ranked Vice Guild leaders in the guild, he was still a Vice Guild leader, yet as Violet Cloud had killed the man, Zero Wing had been heading to Nature Hall for negotiations. Zero Wing was clearly trying to provoke Nature Hall. Zero Wing would likely have trouble getting out of this unscathed, much less negotiate a better situation for Twilight Echo. Meanwhile, in the Storm Empire's Storm City, Xueqi's party of 6 had arrived before Nature Hall's residence. As the Storm Empire's imperial capital, Storm City's player population even surpassed Black Dragon City's. Storm City had nearly 27 million resident players, and its businesses were particularly prosperous. The city's prosperity was due to the Storm Empire's ores. Plenty of ores and gemstones, which other kingdoms and empires severely lacked, were produced within the empire's borders every day. Because of this production, a large number of foreign players visited the empire to trade and purchase items. Moreover, due to the abundance of ores, the Storm Empire's forging industry was exceedingly well developed. Shops that specialized in selling and crafting weapons and equipment could be found all over the city, and plenty of players wore the advanced forger's insignia. Intermediate forgers were a dime a dozen, as well. Not even White River City could say the same. Moreover, as many as 8 known master forgers also called the Storm Empire home. Among them, 2 were independent players. No other empire could dream of achieving the same at this stage of the game. Purely in terms of weapon and equipment production, Storm City far surpassed White River City. Please notify the guild leader Nature that Star Moon Kingdom's Zero Wing has come to discuss something with him, Xueqi said as he approached the Nature Hall member stationed by the residence's entrance. All right, but I can't guarantee that our guild leader will meet with you, the player replied, disdainfully eyeing Xueqi's party. Normally, a large number of guild representatives visited the residence to meet with Nature Hall's guild leader, including representatives from the Storm Empire's first-rate guilds. Even so, their guild leader usually ignored their requests. As for a guild from a kingdom, even the vice guild leaders would likely refuse the request. The Nature Hall member then left to report the matter to his superior. Meanwhile, a middle-aged man sat behind an office desk, flipping through the documents in his hand, in the guild leader's office within Nature Hall's residence. Several level 64 players stood beside this man, all of which were experts with multiple pieces of epic equipment. Any ordinary expert would feel as if they stood in a cage of bloodthirsty beasts if they stood before this group. Suddenly, a player entered the room, and upon seeing the players beside the middle-aged man, he couldn't help but shudder. However, he suppressed the fear in his heart and announced, "Guild leader, there's a group of representatives from Zero Wing asking to meet with you. They're a guild from Star Moon Kingdom. A guild from Starmoon Kingdom. Nature Manifestation raised his head as he listened to the subordinate's report, curiosity flashing in his eyes. Can't you see that the guild leader is busy? It's just a guild from a small kingdom. Send them back to their countryside. A robust man shouted. However, as the subordinate began to turn and leave, the icy-cold goddess sitting beside Nature Manifestation received a message. As she read the message, her expression darkened. "Wait," the woman shouted. "Qilin? What's wrong?" The robust man, who carried a gigantic scale shield, asked. "I've just received news that Owl Life has been killed," the woman, Jade Qilin, softly replied. "That brat got done in? Who did it? Was it Dark Wave? That shouldn't be possible." The robust man was astonished. However, after recalling Twilight Echo's experts, he doubted that any of them could kill Owl Life. "No. According to the reports, he was slain by an expert from Zero Wing," Jade Qilin said. Chapter 2071. Explanation. Zero Wing? Isn't that the guild trying to meet with the guild leader? The shield-carrying man frowned at Jade Qilin's reply. He then turned to the reporting ranger, killing intent lacing his words. "These people sure have guts." A vice-guild leader was one of a guild's public faces. Guilds typically avoided killing each other's vice-guild leaders or guild leaders unless they wanted to shed all pretense, much less one of Nature Hall's vice-guild leaders. "They dare visit us after killing our people? Zero Wing is too arrogant." A gloomy youth sitting on one of the sofas in the office turned to Nature Manifestation and said, "Guild leader, why don't you let my evil spirit legion take care of them?" "Tooth, your evil spirit legion is Nature Hall's blade. Using it to teach a guild from a small kingdom a lesson is making a mountain out of a molehill," Jade Qilin said. "Moreover, Zero Wing must have realized the severity of its actions and come to make amends." Hearing Jade Qilin's reasoning, the other players in the room nodded in agreement. The Evil Spirit Legion was Nature Hall's trump card, and it was a large part of the reason for Nature Hall's victory over the Nine-Star family. Zero Wing didn't even qualify to face this legion. As Jade Qilin had said, Zero Wing must have realized how detrimental killing one of Nature Hall's vice-guild leaders was and was likely here to make amends for the mistake. How could a guild from a small kingdom afford to provoke a superpower like Nature Hall, after all? "Enough!" Nature Manifestation commanded with a low shout, silencing everyone in the room. He shifted his gaze toward the reporting level 63 ranger, saying, "Have someone lead Zero Wing's representatives to the reception room." "Understood." The level 63 ranger answered and bowed nervously. A short moment later, one of the Nature Hall members guarding the residence's entrance led Xueqi's party to the guild hall's reception room, surprising many independent players and the guild's members. Who are those people? The guild leader is actually willing to meet with them? Nowadays, Nature Hall's strength grew rapidly. Guilds often visited the residence in hopes of allying with Nature Hall, but not even first-rate guilds' guild leaders usually made it inside. And yet, Xueqi and his companions followed a guild member to a reception room. Why wouldn't they be surprised? Everyone immediately began to chat about the identity of Xueqi's party. Some of the spies other major powers had planted within Nature Hall also launched investigations into Xueqi's party. If Nature Manifestation were willing to speak with these individuals personally, this event was certainly worth looking into. Nature Manifestation currently sat on a sofa in Nature Hall's luxurious, top-floor reception room. Jade Qilin, Evil Tooth, and a few of the guild's other upper echelons stood beside him, radiating dense killing intent as they watched Xueqi's party enter the room. Based on their auras, it was clear that these players were experts with an immense amount of combat experience. In fact, these peak experts' auras were no weaker than the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's martial dragon, with a few of them being even stronger. 20 silver-armored shield warriors and guardian knights had also been stationed in the room. Not only were these shield warriors and guardian knights level 64, but they also wore level 60 secret silver set equipment. Like well-trained soldiers, they stood in lines along the sides of the room, emitting a solemn aura. Although the various large guilds considered level 60 secret silver equipment top tier at this stage of the game, fully equipping 20 players wasn't exactly impossible. However, these 20 MTs wore level 60 secret silver set equipment. Even a first-rate guild would be fortunate to have 2 or 3 complete sets. Furthermore, players had crafted these MTs' equipment, which meant that Nature Hall was fully capable of crafting morts. Nature Hall's foundations were extraordinary. I've heard that Zero Wing has something to discuss with me? May I know what you wish to discuss? Nature Manifestation watched Shifeng's party enter the room through narrowed eyes. In a deep tone he continued, if this is about Vice Guild leader Owl Life, you may return to your kingdom. I am not interested in listening to your reasoning. As soon as Nature Manifestation was done speaking, the intensity of the 20 silver-armored MT's auras skyrocketed, rapidly decreasing the temperature in the room. Jade Qilin and Nature Hall's other upper echelons revealed sneers and pitying expressions. Nature Manifestation typically let them handle matters related to guilds from small kingdoms, considering the matters beneath him. However, he had insisted on meeting Zero Wing's representatives in person. They had been curious about his sudden change of heart. Now they understood. Owl Life's death had enraged Nature Manifestation, so he wanted to speak with the culprits personally. It had been a long time since they had seen Nature Manifestation so angry. The last time he had been this furious, he had removed 3 guilds from God's domain permanently. Those guilds hadn't been small, but first- and second-rate guilds. Since this guild had dared to enrage Nature Manifestation, Zero Wing would suffer a tragic ending. Even if Zero Wing regretted killing Owl Life and wished to make amends, it was too late to change its fate. Once he was angry, no one could stop Nature Manifestation. Not even 9-Star Family had succeeded in this regard. Explanation? What explanation? Shifeng simply shrugged in response to Nature Manifestation's chilling gaze. What? After all you have done, are you seriously trying to deny your crime? Jade Qilin said, sneering at Shifeng's leisurely expression. Deny? Deny what? Shifeng turned toward Jade Qilin, frowning slightly. Is there even a need to say it? You are responsible for killing our Vice Guild leader Owl Life in the Nether Mine. Jade Qilin hissed, her expression becoming even colder. Oh, that's what you're talking about? Shifeng asked as realization lit his features. Calmly he continued, that's right. We did that. You. Shifeng's relaxed reply stunned Jade Qilin. She had assumed that he'd try to deny the fact. She certainly hadn't expected him to admit it so boldly. It's good that you acknowledge it. What do you have to say for yourselves? Everyone in the room from Nature Hill, including the 20 MTs, Evil Tooth, and the others who stood beside Jade Qilin, radiated dense killing intent. Their expressions made it clear that they were prepared to slaughter these visitors if Shifeng said the wrong thing. What's there to talk about? Could Violet fail to kill this Vice Guild leader, Owl Life? Shifeng asked in a strange tone. The hall fell silent as every player from Nature Hall glared at Shifeng as if they were about to devour him alive. Arrogance. They had never seen such arrogance. Shifeng simply didn't know how to spell the word death. After a short moment, Shifeng returned his gaze to Nature Manifestation, calmly stating, we are merely here to tell you one thing. Twilight Echo, which your guild has targeted, is now under Zero Wing's protection. Chapter 2072. Repelling the enemy with one move. For a time, Nature Hall's members in the room were stunned into silence. They had no idea of how to respond to Shifeng's declaration. Not only had Zero Wing dared to kill one of their Vice Guild leaders, but the guild's representatives had also come to Nature Hall's residence as if the death was of little significance. This swordsman acted as if Zero Wing had killed an ant on the roadside, not a Vice Guild leader. They couldn't help but marvel at Zero Wing's bravery. Now, Zero Wing even announced its protection of Twilight Echo, Nature Hall's latest target. This wasn't bravery. Zero Wing simply had a few loose screws. Not even superpowers would display such arrogance before Nature Hall. Jade Qilin even wondered if Shifeng knew anything about God's domain. Perhaps he had decided that, since his guild was doomed and would be removed from the game, he might as well provoke Nature Hall on its doorstep. Ha ha ha. Good. Very good. It's been too long since our guild has done anything outside of the Empire. To think a small kingdom's guild dares to act so pompously before us. Evil Spirit revealed a grin as he stared coldly at Shifeng, anger tainting his smile. After chasing 9-Star Family out of the Storm Empire, the Empire hadn't had any powers that dared to provoke Nature Hall. To secure its control in the Empire and concentrate the guild's resources, Nature Hall hadn't extended its influence past its borders. Hence, the outside world was unaware of Nature Hall's power. There was also the fact that Xueqi and the others had a few screws loose. Evil Spirit assumed that Zero Wings members had spent too long in their own kingdom and didn't see the difference between the Storm Empire and Star Moon Kingdom, thinking that they could walk through the Empire unhindered. Nature Manifestation's personal security team stared at Zero Wings members as if they were dead men walking. He's infuriated, Boss Spirit. That guy is definitely dead. I bet these people won't get to leave Storm City alive. This is going to be entertaining. That's right. Even if they kneel and beg for their lives, there's no saving them. They'll probably lose more than just one level. Boss Spirit will use that item, and they'll lose 3 levels with each death. If we send a tracking team after them as well, we can even send them back to level 0. Although attacking another player inside an NPC city was risky, players obtained more tools as they reached higher levels. As a result, killing other players inside NPC cities became increasingly easier. This was especially true for a superpower like Nature Hall. Even slaughtering players in an imperial capital wouldn't be a problem for the guild. This was also why the various independent experts had been more hesitant to provoke God's domain's powers. A single mistake could send them back to level 0, after all. Although the Zero Wing members present were experts and more difficult to defeat than independent experts, they were nothing to Nature Hall. Even a party of peak experts would fall in Storm City if they provoked Nature Hall, much less Xueqi's party. Nature Hall had acquired a domain treasure called Dead World from an ancient ruin. As long as a player supplied enough magic crystals, Dead World would create a domain that cut off communication with the outside world. Not even the city's NPC guards would receive a notification of the transgression if one attacked another player within the domain unless it was destroyed or released. Ordinary NPC guards wouldn't even notice the domain when standing next to it. Only the Tier 3 guard captains could see through the domain. However, how rare were Tier 3 NPC guard captains? There wasn't even one Tier 3 guard captain for 10 patrol squads in an imperial capital like Storm City. Meanwhile, each patrol squad generally monitored 3 to 5 streets. If they activated the domain treasure in the proper location, the chances of encountering a guard captain were nearly 0. While Nature Manifestation's 20 personal bodyguards whispered to each other, the guild leader, who had remained silent, raised his head and said, "So be it. Originally, I had planned to send you off with a warning, but since you don't know how to repent for your actions or show proper respect, I'll remove you from God's domain permanently. Then, I'll send someone to visit Zero Wing." In response to his guild leader's declaration, Evil Spirit revealed a stone plate and sacrificed a large number of magic crystals to it. The color in the room then faded to a dull gray. "What? You want to attack us?" Xueqi asked as he sent a glance at Evil Spirit, who wore pitch-black leather armor. "Are you afraid now?" Evil Spirit asked as he shot Xueqi a playful look. Unfortunately, it is too late for regret. He had thought that Nature Manifestation would wait until Xueqi's group left the residence before sending him to take action. He hadn't expected his guild leader to order an attack now. It was clear how truly furious Nature Manifestation was. However, he didn't think the reaction was unreasonable. Zero Wing's representatives were insufferably foolish. Even the King of Hell would laugh at their lunacy and imprison them for a few extra millennia. "Afraid?" Xueqi shook his head. "You're not strong enough for me to fear." "Crap. This is the first time I've met someone so stubborn. Everyone, attack. Kill him." Evil Spirit commanded, his eyes twitching in anger. The 20 silver-armored MTs surged toward Xueqi and his companions. Seeing this, Jade Qilin could not help but watch with a pitying gaze. Zero Wings members might have made it out of Storm City alive, but now, not only had they lost that hope, but they would pay an even greater price. Although she did not know what gave Zero Wings members so much confidence, she was certain that they'd die in this room. Moreover, players who died in the Dead World wouldn't lose a single level, but 3. At their level, leveling up required a lot of time and effort. Losing 3 levels would be a huge setback. Nature Manifestation's 20 personal bodyguards were more than enough to eliminate Xueqi's party, not to mention the guild's peak experts like herself. Not only were these bodyguards refinement realm experts, but they also wielded the Silverlight battle array. When they activated the battle array, they could even kill peak experts. This was why Nature Manifestation's security team only had 20 players. As Jade Qilin and the other peak experts expected their guild leader's bodyguards to annihilate Shifeng's party, several sword lights flashed in the room. Shadow Blade. As if every sword light had a life of its own, they agilely maneuvered through the bodyguards' defenses, striking the players directly. As if some colossal beast had slammed into them, a dozen or so bodyguards flew into the walls behind them, which cracked under the immense force. In the face of death, Blackwater, Starlink, and Miracle's armies failed to remove Zero Wing. What do you think a few refinement realm experts can accomplish? Shifeng asked as he sheathed Killing Ray and sat back on the sofa. He watched Nature Hall's upper echelons calmly as if nothing had happened. Chapter 2073. Suppressing Nature Hall. Looking at the robust figures planted in the walls of the luxurious reception room, the unharmed members of Nature Manifestation's personal security team froze in shock. When they returned their gazes to Shifeng, they wore tense expressions. What's going on? What did he do? The security team members had failed to react to the attack. They had only seen Shifeng swing his sword, and in the next moment, their companions had disappeared from next them and become wall decorations. How is this possible? Evil Tooth was just as stunned to watch the bodyguards fly through the room. He was very familiar with these bodyguards' strength. When they cooperated, they could even take down peak experts. The Silverlight Battle Array allowed them to share their senses, which greatly strengthened their defenses. However, despite the bodyguards' enhanced defenses, Shifeng had maneuvered his skill past their defenses and dealt direct damage. His control with the skill was frighteningly accurate. Good. No wonder why you dared to show such arrogance. Everyone, use your magic scrolls. Don't fight him at close range. Evil Tooth commanded after snapping out of his daze. He then turned toward Jade Qilin and whispered, "Qilin, I need your help in a moment. This person is far stronger than I expected." He admitted that even he could replicate Shifeng's performance, but he was an assassin, and the assassin combat method allowed him to slay opponents that were far stronger than him. "You're going to fight as well? Fine, leave it to me." Jade Qilin nodded. Jade Qilin immediately began to chant an incantation. In the meantime, the rest of the bodyguards followed Evil Tooth's command and retrieved Tier 2 magic scrolls from their bags. These magic scrolls were extremely rare, some containing control spells, some holding AoE spells, and others possessing single-target spells. They had originally prepared these magic scrolls to use against enemies when outnumbered, but against such a strong melee opponent like Shifeng, they had no choice but to rely on attacking from afar with these magic scrolls. In the next moment, flaming thorns, spears of light, and chains of sand flew toward Shifeng, launching a wide array of spells like a combined assault from a team of magical class players. With how cramped the reception room was, dodging all of these spells wasn't realistic. Most of the spells were also impossible to block as they were AoE attacks. "Die!" the bodyguards shouted. However, before the multiple spells bombarded Shifeng, he lifted Killing Ray and slashed the empty space before him. Countless arcs of lightning appeared out of thin air, devouring everything in their path. Even the Tier 2 spells vanished the moment they touched the lightning. Lightning Edge. Boom! A massive explosion shook the reception room, its lavish decorations becoming nothing more than remnants. The bodyguards that had attacked Shifeng had vanished from the room. The weapons and equipment pieces on the floor were the only indicator of their prior presence. Over a dozen well-equipped MTs with over 180,000 HP had died, just like that. In contrast, Shifeng hadn't changed. He hadn't even moved from his original position, much less taken damage. Shifeng had executed only 2 moves, yet he had killed more than half of Nature Manifestation's famous security team. The security team's remaining members were crippled. Shifeng's combat power was horrific. How was he supposed to be a player? He was basically a monster that destroyed everything in his path. Just as everyone assumed the battle was over, Jade Qilin, who hadn't stopped chanting, finally finished her spells. She slammed the butt of her resplendent staff against the floor and commanded, "Seal!" 3 magic arrays appeared around her, each from a different spell, yet they had appeared simultaneously and were of similar design as if they were a single spell. A 3-fold large-scale spell? Alluring Summer, who stood behind Shifeng, was surprised to see the arrays circling Jade Qilin. Double casting was an extremely difficult technique for most magical class experts, especially when casting Tier 2 spells. Needless to say, triple casting 3 Tier 2 spells was even more difficult. However, there were certain spells in God's domain that could only be used when casting multiple spells. Generally, these were large-scale spells that required multiple players to cast, yet Jade Qilin could cast one that typically needed 3 players by herself. These large-scale spells were far more powerful than individual spells of the same tier. The instant Jade Qilin spells took effect, 5 golden chains appeared around Xueqi, each containing soul-shuddering power. Not even Grand Lords of the same level would dare to touch these chains. As if they had a life of their own, these chains launched at Xueqi like anacondas. Let's see how he blocks this. The Nature Hall members sneered at Xueqi as they watched. Tier 2 large-scale spell. Holy Chains. This was Jade Qilin's ultimate spell. Although it had a very long cast time and wasn't suited for one-on-one combat, it would exhibit tremendous power once cast. Jade Qilin had killed multiple peak experts with this move, earning the nickname Chain Killer from the Storm Empire's players. However, the expressions Nature Hall's members wore froze as they watched what happened next. Xueqi blocked the golden chains, which even Grand Lords feared, with his swords, a thunderous roar echoing throughout the room when his blades collided with a magical attack. Despite the 5 chains' exceptional strength, they couldn't reach Xueqi. He deflected every incoming attack. As Xueqi defended himself against the magical chains, Evil Tooth appeared behind him in complete silence. After revealing himself, Evil Tooth thrust a glowing crimson dagger toward Xueqi's back. Tier 2 taboo skill, Blood Shadow. This single attack contained even more power than Jade Qilin's 5 chains combined. You've finally made your move. Rather than panicking in the face of this sudden and well-timed attack, Xueqi revealed a smile. Swords Transmigration. Suddenly, the Twilight Blade and Killing Ray transformed into 2 streaks of light and wrapped around the 5 holy chains. As if they were under his control, the 5 chains then flew to intercept Evil Tooth's crimson dagger, the collision throwing sparks that temporarily blinded everyone in the room. When the light faded, Nature Hall's members wore grim expressions. Evil Tooth's HP plummeted as he stared at Xueqi in horror. Although he wanted to say something, he had already lost the last of his HP. With darkening vision, Evil Tooth collapsed to the floor. Silence dominated the reception room. Nature Manifestation's personal bodyguards had worked with 2 of the guild's peak experts against one opponent, yet they were either dead or crippled, aside from Jade Qilin. Like an unshakable mountain, Xueqi still stood where he had stated. The death world shattered the moment Evil Tooth died, and the room returned to its original state. Chapter 2074. Another monster silence. Shock. Horror. Even though Dead World had been removed and the reception room had returned to its neutral state, Jade Qilin and the other Nature Hall peak experts felt stifled and overwhelmed. Even Nature Manifestation, who had observed the fight in silence, wore a gloomy expression. Who are you? Nature Manifestation asked Xueqi. Ordinary peak experts couldn't topple his personal bodyguards or Evil Tooth, the Evil Spirit Legion's commander. While he had considered the possibility of their defeat, he hadn't expected it to happen so easily. He couldn't imagine anyone, aside from Domain Realm monsters, who would be capable of such a feat. But how rare were Domain Realm experts in God's domain? Every Domain Realm expert that had ever existed in the virtual gaming world was accounted for, and they were all responsible for shaking the community to its core. However, based on his information, Xueqi's name wasn't on that list. Black Flame, Xueqi stated calmly. Black Flame? Zero Wings Guild leader? Shock colored Jade Qilin's face when she heard Xueqi's reply. But how? Black Flame wasn't unknown to Nature Hall. After all, he ranked among the top 10 on the God's Domain expert list. He was a peak expert that had reached the Void Realm, and one of the top peak experts in the game. But at the end of the day, that's all he was. A peak expert. Although they earned the various superpowers' attention, they weren't powerful enough to threaten a superpower's very existence. Every superpower had plenty of peak experts in its ranks. No matter how she looked at it, however, no peak expert should be capable of the combat power Xueqi had displayed. What an excellent scheme. So, you've deliberately hidden your strength all this time? Nature Manifestation asked. Unexpected, he was actually smiling. However, knowing their guild leader's personality, Jade Qilin and her companion's new nature manifestation smile wasn't an indication of his good mood. Rather, it was a result of his anger reaching a tipping point. The various superpowers in God's domain viewed every domain realm expert as immensely important. Rather, these experts were impossible to ignore. Domain realm experts were strategic weapons, and as players reached higher levels, the threat these experts posed to superpowers would grow. Hence, superpowers took considerable precautions against every domain realm expert they encountered. If Xueqi had revealed himself as a domain realm expert early on, the various superpowers would have paid more attention to Zero Wing. The guild's name would have likely joined the superpowers blacklists, regardless of its developmental state. Some superpowers might have even extinguished Zero Wing immediately to save themselves from future trouble. As for Xueqi recently reaching the domain realm, it wasn't likely. Reaching the domain realm proved that one transcended the limits of humanity. Despite the various super first-rate guilds and super guilds accumulating resources and knowledge over many generations, each superpower had, at most, nurtured only a handful of domain realm experts in each generation. It was easy to imagine how difficult reaching the domain realm truly was. In other words, Xueqi must have hidden his strength from the public deliberately to avoid attracting too much attention. Now that he was satisfied with his personal strength and that of his guild, he wanted to use Nature Hall as a stepping stone to show off his power. That would explain why Xueqi was willing to make an enemy of Nature Hall just to help Twilight Echo, a guild he was barely connected to. Guild leader, should we request senior fans' presence? Jade Qilin whispered to her guild leader. Although domain realm experts were extremely rare, Nature Hall had its own collection of them. Senior Fan was one example. Moreover, he had spent most of his time in the Storm Empire. If they notified him, he would soon return to the residence. If Senior Fan returned, with the help of Nature Hall's other peak experts, they could ensure that Xueqi's party didn't leave the residence with their lives. After all, this was Nature Hall's main headquarters. After Jade Qilin posed her question, the three imposing men beside her directed their killing intent toward Xueqi. A mere up-and-coming guild like Zero Wing actually dared to use Nature Hall as a stepping stone. This was unacceptable. Suddenly, the reception room's doors flew open, and a group of 50-plus silver-armored experts charged in and surrounded Xueqi's party. Although they weren't refinement realm experts like Nature Manifestation's personal bodyguards, they could rival such experts with their Silverlight battle array. What? You still insist on fighting? Xueqi asked as he calmly watched Nature Hall's members from his seat, showing no signs of anxiety or concern. He wouldn't have dared to visit Nature Hall's residence before he had reached the domain realm and acquired the Twilight Blade. This was, after all, a superpower's headquarters, and Nature Hall would have plenty of methods to deal with invaders. The guild would also have other domain realm experts nearby. At this stage of the game, Xueqi's fight against Martial Dragon on Thunder Island wasn't a proper indicator of domain realm experts' prowess. During that battle, he had had the advantage in terms of basic attributes and skills, and since Martial Dragon had only been a Tier 1 player, the man's weak physique had prevented him from fully exhibiting his strength. To put it simply, players' physiques at that time had restricted domain realm experts. Xueqi hadn't gotten a clear idea of how strong domain realm experts were in that fight, but once he had reached the same realm, he understood these experts' true power. With a Tier 1 player's physique, domain realm experts would be limited to 50% of their true combat power at most. However, void realm experts would be able to display their full combat power. It was only natural that domain realm experts back then had only seemed slightly more powerful than peak experts. At this stage of the game, however, not only had domain realm experts' physiques greatly improved, but their weapon and equipment standards had also increased. A superpower's domain realm expert likely wore at least 3 or 4 pieces of epic equipment, possibly even a fragmented legendary item. Superpowers had frightening resources and expansive territory. Encountering a superpower that owned 1 or 2 fragmented legendary items at this stage of the game wouldn't be odd. As soon as Xueqi was done speaking, Fire Dance, Cola, Alluring Summer, Shadow Blade, and Yi Wumian, who stood behind him, stepped forward and released their auras. As if a volcano had erupted in the room, an intense energy washed over its occupants, and the expressions that Nature Hall's members wore changed instantly. Fire Dance and her comrades felt like primordial beasts that had just awoken from a long slumber. The pressure they radiated was painfully stifling, particularly Fire Dance's aura. Could she be another domain realm expert? The thought drifted through Jade Qilin and her companions' minds, shuddering at the idea. Zero Wing was merely a small kingdom's guild. It wasn't even a superpower, yet it had 2 domain realm experts. Since when were domain realm experts so common? If Xueqi could hear these peak experts' thoughts, he wouldn't have been surprised. Among the 5 players he had brought with him, only Fire Dance held a fragmented legendary weapon. She also had her own bloodline and 6 epic items. In Zero Wing, Fire Dance's equipment standards were only second to his. Moreover, she was only a step away from the Truth Realm and had already mastered multiple advanced combat techniques. In her current state, she could definitely contend with domain realm experts. Chapter 2075. Miscalculation. Although Jade Qilin and Nature Hall's other peak experts had intended to act, they couldn't help but freeze the moment they felt Fire Dance's oppressive aura. Guild leader, are we still going to fight them? Jade Qilin could not help but ask as she turned to look at Nature Manifestation, her expression hesitant. One domain realm expert was already extremely difficult to defeat. Now that Fire Dance, who felt like another domain realm expert, had joined the fray, she had to take the situation more seriously. Ordinary players might not realize the importance of 1 or 2 domain realm experts in a guild, but as one of Nature Hall's upper echelons, she was very clear of the implications. This was no longer a matter of Xueqi or Fire Dance's personal strength, but of Zero Wing's foundations. Instead, it was a matter of Zero Wing's guild foundations. If Zero Wing had only possessed a single domain realm expert, it could have been explained away as luck. It would prove nothing regarding Zero Wing's foundation. However, the fact that Zero Wing had at least 2 domain realm experts couldn't be shrugged off in the same way. Domain realm experts weren't as common as cabbages. If Zero Wing truly had 2 domain realm experts, the guild wasn't as simple as everyone assumed. Qilin, you're overthinking this. Her aura doesn't prove that she's a domain realm monster. She could simply have absurdly high basic attributes. Zero Wing has no background, so it's lucky enough to have 1 domain realm expert. How could it possibly have 2? And such a young one at that. A solemn man with a scar across his face spoke up. Listening to the man's reasoning, Nature Hall's members relaxed, releasing more than half of their anxiety. No one doubted this man's words. He was Deep Thunder, Nature Hall's first vice guild leader and one of the guild's main support pillars. He was also one of the top 10 experts on the Gods Domain's secret experts list. The secret pavilion had 2 Gods Domain experts lists. One recorded the top 1,000 experts with the most attention-grabbing battle records. The second was a secret list, which only superpowers could purchase. The secret experts list only contained 100 names. However, these players weren't ranked by their battle records, but based on the combat standards they had revealed. One had to be a Void Realm expert before the secret pavilion would even consider them for the list. Any peak expert that could rank on the secret experts list was, at most, a step away from the domain realm. Those that ranked among the top 10 were practically pounding against the edge of this realm. They only needed a slight push to reach the domain realm. Deep Thunder was one of these experts. Although none of Nature Hall's experts in the room had reached the domain realm yet, Deep Thunder was undoubtedly the most knowledgeable about it. Since Deep Thunder was certain that Fire Dance was not a domain realm expert, there was a 90% chance that he was correct. Thunder is right. Everyone needs to calm down. Although I don't know how this little girl from Zero Wing has such frightening basic attributes. Zero Wing is 100 years too early if it thinks it can stroll into Nature Hall's residence with such an attitude. Nature Manifestation commented, backing up Deep Thunder. He flashed Xueqi a piercing glare before commanding, summon Senior Fan and the Evil Spirit Legion members immediately. Lock down the residence. I want to see how capable these Zero Wing representatives truly are. Although Xueqi had displayed astonishing combat power, Nature Hall wasn't a pushover. Nature Hall had gone to great lengths to recruit Senior Fan and convince him to protect the guild. The Elder had been a domain realm monster for decades, and his combat standards were far above Xueqi's, who, at most, had only entered the domain realm within the past few years. Senior Fan also wore the best equipment available in the game, and the Evil Spirit Legion was one of Nature Hall's trump cards. Although the Evil Spirit Legion only had 100 members, Every member was a refinement realm expert or better. Even the weakest among them had mastered 3 combat techniques, and including the Silverlight battle array, they could even defeat domain realm experts. The Evil Spirit Legion was also why Nature Hall even dared to provoke super first-rate guilds. However, the moment Nature Manifestation issued the order, Fire Dance's group moved, charging straight toward the guild leader. Taking the lead, Kola and Yi Wumian dashed forward like 2 Tyrannosaurus Rexes. When the reinforcing security team members collided with the 2 MTs, they flew backward as if they had been hit by a truck, their tight defensive formation shattering instantly. Alluring Summer and Shadow Sword followed the 2 MTs closely. Alluring Summer sent at least 1 player flying with each spell she cast, while Shadow Sword forced multiple players to stumble back with each slash. These 2 easily repelled any security team members that approached from the sides. Rather than a battle, this looked like adults toying with children. Taking advantage of the chaos, Fire Dance blew past the security team's blockade and arrived before Nature Manifestation. "Don't think you can get through me that easily," Deep Thunder bellowed, swinging his gigantic 2-handed battle axe with a solemn expression, leaving no room for Fire Dance to dodge. Tier 2 skill, Earth Bombardment. Pang! Not only was Earth Bombardment an AoE attack that amplified his strength, but it could also significantly reduce players' movement speed when he struck. This was the trademark tier skill of the Magic Warrior hidden class. The move could only be blocked, not dodged. In addition, the Magic Warrior class was a specialized advanced class for berserkers, using magic to strengthen the user's body. However, Deep Thunder's expression froze when his attack landed. Fire Dance's flimsy short sword had actually stopped his humongous axe's descent. Not only had Fire Dance remained stable, but she also retained every point of her HP. Before Deep Thunder could swing his battle axe again, Fire Dance's 1,000 transformations slithered toward the berserker's neck with an utterly unpredictable attack trajectory. Advanced Combat Technique, Illusory Snake. Scram! Deep Thunder shouted as he activated Whirlwind Slash to defend himself. Boom! When short sword and battle axe collided, a sharp clang echoed throughout the room. A moment later, Deep Thunder, who prided himself on his strength, stumbled 3 steps back, staring at Fire Dance with an incredulous look. While he had recognized Fire Dance's amazing basic attributes, he hadn't expected them to be so high. How does she have so much strength? Deep Thunder wasn't the only one the situation surprised. Jade Qilin, who cast spells from the side, glanced over in horror when she noticed Deep Thunder stumble. In God's domain, there was a major difference between one-handed weapon strength and that of 2-handed weapons. This was why most Berserker players chose 2-handed weapons. 2-handed weapons could make full use of Berserker's high strength. However, despite being an assassin, Fire Dance exhibited greater strength with a short sword than Deep Thunder. This unraveled everything Jade Qilin thought she knew about God's domain. Moreover, Deep Thunder wore 3 pieces of epic equipment, wielded an epic weapon, and the rest of his equipment was comprised of level 60 dark gold items. She couldn't imagine how an assassin could block one of his attacks with a one-handed sword. After sending Deep Thunder backward, Fire Dance abruptly vanished. Void Steps. By the time anyone could react, Fire Dance had reappeared before Nature Manifestation, holding her 1,000 transformations against the guild leader's throat. As a cursemancer, Fire Dance held Nature Manifestation's life in her hands. Seeing this, Nature Hall's members paused with gloomy expressions. When Nature Manifestation looked up at Fire Dance, his countenance was ashen. Fire Dance's group had only moved 5 seconds ago, yet they had already gotten past more than 50 refinement realm and better experts, threatening his life. Not even a domain realm expert could perform such a feat. Chapter 2076. Do you need a doctor? When Fire Dance took Nature Manifestation captive, Nature Hall's members stayed their hands as they hatefully glared at the female assassin. At the same time, though, a hint of fear could be seen in their eyes. What should we do now, Vice Guild Leader? Jade Qilin asked Deep Thunder quietly, frowning as she watched Fire Dance play with her short sword from behind Nature Manifestation. She didn't have enough authority in this situation to make a decision. Nature Manifestation was the guild's symbol. If they let him die, it would humiliate their guild. However, Fire Dance currently had control over Nature Manifestation's life and death. Even though peak experts like Jade Chelan could cross the 6-yard distance in less than half a second would be more than enough time to kill their guild leader for someone with Fire Dance's strength and speed. Deep Thunder said nothing in response to Jade Chelan's question. He didn't know what to do either. Zero Wing was far more terrifying than he had imagined. If Fire Dance were truly a domain realm expert, this situation at most would have surprised him. But the problem lay in the fact that she wasn't one, which horrified him. After their brief clash, he was certain that the female assassin had only reached the refinement realm, although she wasn't your typical refinement realm expert. However, he couldn't articulate how she differed from the average refinement realm expert regardless. Her combat standard could, at best, rival flowing water realm experts. She was almost nothing compared to an expert like him, who was only a small step away from reaching the domain realm. Yet, despite her inferior combat standards, Fire Dance could suppress him in a confrontation. Moreover, she had done so effortlessly. She had even taken Nature Manifestation captive in an instant. Although the guild leader was only an ordinary peak expert, this outcome was shocking. Not even the refinement realm experts understood this, much less the ordinary experts. Peak experts were known as such because they stood at the peak of God's domain. Even domain realm experts would struggle to threaten a peak expert's life, yet Fire Dance had done so effortlessly. He couldn't imagine what weapons and equipment would be necessary to allow an expert, who had reached the flowing water realm at best, to command even greater combat power than domain realm monsters. However, that wasn't the worst of it. Zero Wing's other representatives were obviously only refinement realm experts, but they had displayed combat power that could easily rival peak experts. Not even super first-rate guilds were likely capable of nurturing such high-quality refinement realm experts. After silence reigned over the room for a short moment, Nature Manifestation discarded his shock and turned to glare at Xueqi. Do you think that I'll simply allow Nature Hall to let Zero Wing off the hook just because you've captured me? Nature Manifestation asked, sneering. Don't be foolish. It is just one level and one piece of equipment. I can afford the loss. If you go through with this, however, Zero Wing won't have the power to endure Nature Hall's wrath. The strength Xueqi's party had displayed had surprised him, but at the end of the day, an individual's strength was nothing compared to a guild's. Regardless of how powerful this Zero Wing party was, it didn't change anything about the difference between Zero Wing and Nature Hall. That's right, you should think this through carefully, Guild Leader Black Flame. If you do this, there will be no saving the relationship between our guilds, Jade Chelan said in an attempt to persuade Xueqi. I believe you are aware of Nature Hall's strategy. In the end, only Zero Wing will suffer. As Jade Chelan finished speaking, Nature Hall's members calmed their fears and revealed confident smiles. They had been stunned after witnessing the combat power Xueqi's party commanded, but after giving the matter some thought, they realized that Xueqi's party would only sign their death warrants if they killed Nature Manifestation. Zero Wing was merely a kingdom's guild. Regardless of its battle records, it was still far weaker than Nature Hall. Zero Wing could not afford to endure Nature Hall's wrath at all. As a guild leader, Xueqi must have realized this. Unless Xueqi insisted on dragging Zero Wing down with him, he wouldn't let Fire Dance kill the other guild leader. Even Storm City's independent players wouldn't believe that Xueqi would do such a thing, let alone these guild upper echelons. As the smiles Nature Hall's members wore spread with delight, Xueqi, who watched from his seat, returned the grins and said, "What you say is true. There is a big difference between Zero Wing and Nature Hall. But what if Nature Hall lost Storm City?" Lost Storm City? Is this fellow dreaming? What a joke. How could our guild possibly lose Storm City? Nature Hall's members began to laugh, thinking Xueqi had gone mad. Storm City was Nature Hall's main headquarters. Not even a superpower could dethrone the guild in its own city, much less Zero Wing. You're referring to the auction arena battle, right? Nature Manifestation laughed. While I understand your thinking, that is a battle of experts and resources. Zero Wing's experts might be impressive, but do you really think Zero Wing can outmatch Nature Hall's resources? Superpowers like Nature Hall had long since investigated the auction arena's rules. In this competition, resources were far more important than military might. Hence, all of the various superpowers fervently collected epic materials while they had time before the auction arena competition began. Compared to Nature Hall, Zero Wing's material collection speed was useless. How could Zero Wing possibly hope to defeat Nature Hall in a contest for Storm City's auction house? However, as Nature Manifestation finished his statement, Xueqi revealed a dark gold crystal from his bag. The crystal was unusually eye-catching in this room, and it drew everyone's gaze. While most of the reception room's occupants didn't understand why Xueqi had revealed this crystal, Nature Manifestation froze when he saw it. How did you get that? Nature Manifestation could not help but ask. Nature Manifestation's sudden change of expression even confused Fire Dance and her companions, let alone Nature Hall's members. No one knew why the Nature Hall's almighty guild leader would seem scared of a single crystal. Do you really need to ask? Xueqi said, revealing a faint smile. I am the player responsible for activating Thunder Axe City, of course. Is it so strange that I have this crystal? The item in his hand was none other than the Thunder Axe Crystal, which was capable of teleporting a large number of players to Thunder Axe City. It also normally cost 5,000 Thunder Axe City contribution points. You activated Thunder Axe City? That is impossible. How could you be responsible? Nature Manifestation stared at Xueqi with an incredulous look. Thunder Axe City was a super large-scale neutral city, and after its activation, it had quickly become a hub for many superpowers, including Nature Hall. Countless first- and second-rate guilds visited the city, as well. The neutral city was so popular due to its abundant resources, especially incredibly rare epic materials. Thunder Axe City was practically a treasure trove. However, traveling to and developing in Thunder Axe City was quite difficult. Due to its terrain and environment, not even expert players could remain in the city for long. Even with its sturdy foundations, Nature Hall could only afford to send 300 experts to develop in the city long-term. However, not only did Xueqi possess the Thunder Axe Crystal, which one could purchase from the Thunder Axe Temple and provided convenient transport to the city, but he was also responsible for Thunder Axe City's activation. However, when Nature Manifestation recalled the group of giant players Zero Wing possessed and the Thunder Axe Crystal in Xueqi's hand, which no player should be able to obtain at this stage of the game, he knew that Xueqi's claim was likely true. Guild Leader Nature, what's wrong? You don't look too good. Should I call a doctor? Xueqi asked, chuckling at Nature Manifestation's deathly pale expression. Chapter 2077. Nature Hall submits. As Xueqi's calm voice continuously echoed throughout the room, Nature Manifestation's expression twisted into something ugly. Traces of fear flashed in his eyes, stupefying Nature Hall's members. Nature Manifestation stood at the very top of the Storm Empire. A single word from him could decide the life or death of the Empire's various guilds. He was also a bona fide peak expert. He could lead Nature Hall to become an overlord in God's domain in the future. Yet now, Nature Hall's members weren't the only ones surprised. The guild leader's reaction confused Fire Dance and her companions. Nature Manifestation had reacted calmly even when Fire Dance had taken him captive, yet now, he seemed more afraid of Xueqi's few sentences. Why wouldn't they be surprised? What do you want? Nature Manifestation asked as he watched Xueqi, afraid. If he had only seen Xueqi as a domain realm expert before, he viewed the man as a monster, capable of shaking Nature Hall's very foundations, after learning that this swordsman had pioneered Thunder Axe City and acquired the Thunder Axe Crystal. Most people were still unaware of Thunder Axe City. Even in Nature Hall, only the guild's upper echelons and the experts that had visited the city knew about its splendor. According to their understanding, Thunder Axe City should have activated more than 2 weeks ago. The various superpowers, however, had only discovered the city 9 days ago. When Nature Manifestation thought about how Xueqi could send a large number of players to the city with the Thunder Axe Crystal and the man's status as Thunder Axe City's pioneer, he couldn't help but shudder. Epic materials were even more important than expert players in the auction arena's battles. Zero Wing's members had already proven their combat power. If the guild also had a wealth of epic materials, Zero Wing could pose a significant threat to Nature Hall in the upcoming auction arena contest. Meanwhile, Deep Thunder, Jade Qilin, and Nature Hall's other upper echelons stared at Xueqi in fear. They had counted themselves fortunate to send 300 experts to Thunder Axe City, but Xueqi was actually responsible for activating the neutral city. Nature Hall is so powerful. How could Zero Wing ever hope to compare? Xueqi laughed. He then said, "We are only here to help Twilight Echo learn whether or not it can withdraw from the Storm Empire in safety. You shouldn't overthink the situation. Guild leader Nature. Fine. Out of respect for Zero Wing, our issue with Twilight Echo stops here. As long as Twilight Echo leaves the Storm Empire, Nature Hall will let it leave. Nature Manifestation answered through gritted teeth. Even Nature Hall would struggle to take out experts like Fire Dance, Cola, and the others. If Zero Wing dispatched a large number of experts and relied on the epic materials it gained from Thunderax City, he wasn't confident that Nature Hall could hold Storm City. After all, Thunderax City had a frightening supply of epic resources available. If Zero Wing took control of Storm City's auction house, Nature Hall's development would be severely affected. Even if Zero Wing failed, it could still force Nature Hall to dispatch more forces than planned, which would, in turn, ruin the guild's plans to claim other cities' auction houses. As Nature Hall's guild leader, Nature Manifestation couldn't sacrifice the guild's larger plans just to punish Twilight Echo. Moreover, he suspected that Zero Wing had far more trump cards than what it had revealed in this reception room. Of course, this was only his conjecture. The fact that Xueqi had pioneered Thunderax City was already frightening. Nature Manifestation couldn't think of what could be even more impressive than that. When Nature Hall's reinforcements heard their guild leader's decision, their jaws dropped. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. Just who is this black flame? Nature Hall's members grew more curious about Xueqi. This man had actually forced their guild leader to compromise with just a few words. No one would believe this if they told them. Nature Manifestation had even chased the 9-star family out of the Storm Empire. How could he possibly submit to a guild from a small kingdom? Guild leader Nature is quite open-minded. If there are no other problems, we'll be taking our leave, Xueqi said with a smile. Standing, he turned and left the tattered reception room alongside Fire Dance and the others. Xueqi had never intended to steal Storm City's auction house. He had simply wanted to scare Nature Manifestation. There were currently tons of problems in White River City that required his attention. With Zero Wing's resources and experts, the guild could, at most, contest for one city's auction house. Only Nature Manifestation did not know this. Although Thunderax City had an abundance of epic materials, the neutral city had only activated around 2 weeks ago. There were far too few players in the city for it to exhibit its true potential. Moreover, Nature Manifestation thought too highly of Xueqi's position as the city's pioneer. Even if Xueqi had secured a 2-star smithy, he wouldn't acquire as many epic materials as guild's raiding team dungeons. If Nature Manifestation realized this, he'd faint with anger and try to fight Zero Wing to the death. As Xueqi and his subordinates made their way to the door, the Nature Hall players guarding the door stepped aside to let them through after receiving a signal from Nature Manifestation. Jade Qilin and the other upper echelons only returned their attention to their guild leader after Zero Wing's party had left the guild hall. Guild leader, are we really going to give up Twilight Echo? Jade Qilin asked. If we do this, news of this incident will spread throughout the Empire. So be it. In any case, keeping a tight lid on this is impossible. Nature Manifestation grumbled as he massaged his temples. Annoyed, he continued. I never would have thought that Zero Wing was responsible for activating the city that has caused such a sensation among the various superpowers. We'll likely see a difficult period in God's domain soon. You should begin to prepare for it. Understood. Jade Qilin nodded, fully understanding Nature Manifestation's intentions. He had assumed that the first auction arena competition would be an exclusive playground for the game's superpowers. But now that Zero Wing had revealed itself as a potential competitor, the various superpowers' plans were ruined. Nobody would have imagined that Zero Wing would be the cause of the situation plaguing the various superpowers. After Xueqi's party left Storm City, news of Nature Hall abandoning its harassment of Twilight Echo quickly reached the Empire's various powers. What? Nature Hall gave up on Twilight Echo? But why? What kind of guild is Zero Wing? For a time, this matter caused an uproar in the Storm Empire. Nobody would have thought that Nature Hall would stop targeting Twilight Echo out of respect for Zero Wing. Every power in the Empire was immediately curious about Zero Wing. Meanwhile, news of this matter also reached Twilight Echo's residence in Windy City. What did you just say? Nature Hall has given up on us because of Zero Wing and recalled its forces? Dark Wave was stunned when he heard his subordinates report, unable to believe the news. Chapter 2078. Twilight Echo shaken. When Twilight Echo received the news of Nature Hall's withdrawal, silence reigned of the guild leader's office. The dozen or so guild upper echelons in the room didn't know how to react to this development. Nature Hall gave up? But why? What did Zero Wings members do? Nature Hall had intended to use Twilight Echo as an example to stabilize its rule in the Storm Empire and expand its influence past the Empire's borders. Nature Hall had been adamant on destroying Twilight Echo. They had been discussing their safe withdrawal from the Storm Empire and their defense against Nature Hall. But after nearly an hour, their despair had only intensified. The difference between their two guilds was too massive. At this point, Nature Hall only needed a fraction of its strength to remove Twilight Echo from God's domain. Even with Zero Wing's help, they didn't think that they could withstand Nature Hall. Zero Wing was, after all, only on par with a first-rate guild. Yet, Nature Hall had unexpectedly withdrawn its assault. They couldn't help but wonder how Zero Wing had accomplished the feat. A powerful background. A transaction. They considered many possibilities, but none seemed reliable or possible. However, it was an inescapable fact that Zero Wing had convinced Nature Hall to leave Twilight Echo in peace. Dark Wave turned to Aqua Rose, a myriad of emotions overwhelming his heart. When Violet Cloud had informed Owlife that Zero Wing intended to protect Twilight Echo, Dark Wave had assumed it had been Zero Wing's way of taking a stand against Nature Hall. He hadn't actually believed that her guild could protect his. Looking at it now, however, it seemed that Violet Cloud had meant what she had said. This was the Storm Empire's overlord they were talking about. Although he did not know how Zero Wing had stopped Nature Hall, its success in doing so proved the guild's strength. When Aqua Rose had left Twilight Echo to join an insignificant, upstart guild from some backwater kingdom, many of the guild's members had mocked her for her foolishness. They had all thought that she was stupid. If she hadn't been so stubborn, she would have kept her position as an honorary elder and had access to plenty of opportunities to display her talent. Twilight Echo had been a veteran first-rate guild for decades, not a force a small guild without a background could compare to. Who would have thought that the small, insignificant guild Aqua Rose had joined would grow to become so powerful? Not only was Zero Wing Star Moon Kingdom's overlord, but it also commanded the strength of a first-rate guild. Now it had saved Twilight Echo from the brink of destruction, convincing a superpower like Nature Hall to abandon its plans. After this series of events, Dark Wave couldn't fathom how powerful Zero Wing truly was, despite the fact that he led a veteran first-rate guild. If news of this reached Twilight Echo's guild elders, the old fellows and company representatives that had mocked and ridiculed Aqua Rose would likely die from embarrassment. They had all played a major part in dismissing her from her position as honorary elder. Due to this incident and her position in Zero Wing, Aqua Rose would have considerable influence in Twilight Echo from now on. The guild might even follow her whims. Dark Wave wasn't the only one to think this. Every upper echelon in the office realized the implications of today's events. Their views of Aqua Rose had utterly changed. Aside from her joy, Aqua Rose was stunned, as well. She hadn't imagined that Xueqi would actually be able to stop Nature Hall. Shortly after, Violet Cloud relayed Xueqi's latest message to Twilight Echo's upper echelons, informing them that as long as the guild left the Storm Empire, Nature Hall wouldn't take further action against it. The young woman then left Twilight Echo's residence, returning to Star Moon Kingdom with her team. As for Aqua Rose, she only intended to return after dealing with a few matters with her old guild. Twilight Echo's upper echelons eagerly hoped that Aqua Rose would stay for some time. Twilight Echo was going to leave the Storm Empire and find another kingdom to continue its development. This meant that it would have to deal with the overlord of whichever kingdom they chose. If they had the help of a powerhouse like Zero Wing, settling in their new home would be far easier. Meanwhile, news of the events between Nature Hall and Twilight Echo soon reached God's domain's many superpowers. Nature Hall was one of them, and even though this incident was a small matter in the other superpowers' eyes, it was still necessary to watch the situation. Or Empire, Crimson Flame Fortress. How can Nature Hall be so dumb? It gave up such a good opportunity to stabilize its position in the Storm Empire just because of Zero Wing? Did Zero Wing offer the guild some massive bribe? Jing Yang, who stood inside Blackwater's vice guild leader's office, ranted his confusion after reading the latest message. Nature Hall had been developing rapidly lately, and it easily ranked among the top 10 fastest developing superpowers in God's domain. Many veteran super first-rate guilds were even starting to feel threatened. Yet, out of respect for Zero Wing, the guild had abandoned its plans. It was truly surprising. Not bad. It seems Zero Wing is quite capable, after all. It's no wonder why it rejected my offer of cooperation, Xueqi said, a charming smile forming on her face. Vice Guild Leader. You think too highly of Zero Wing. I don't know what benefits it offered Nature Hall to settle this matter, but Zero Wing hasn't solved its predicament in White River City. Ignoring the several powers that desire the city's auction house, Zero Wing has its hands full with its own internal problems, Jingyong said. Starlink has recently invested a lot of capital into hindering Zero Wing. It is even trying to poach Zero Wing's upper echelons and core members by offering to triple their current salaries. Starlink has also begun to claim commissions meant for Zero Wing by offering lower prices, slowly chipping away at Zero Wing's financial situation. I doubt it will be more than a month before Zero Wing crumbles in on itself. Larger guilds had both advantages and disadvantages. When a guild had a low member count, its daily expenditures were relatively small. Hence, its finances were easy to handle. However, as a guild grew, it would face more difficult financial problems. Including hostile corporations' intervention, a guild's financial problems could become even more challenging. Hence, although Zero Wing seemed to have grown quite powerful, it had acquired new weaknesses. Zero Wing had still been a relatively small guild without a headquarters in the real world, and as a result, it hadn't had to contend with major expenditures. Its size had rendered hostile corporations' interference ineffective, but things had changed. Now, not only had Zero Wing purchased Ouroboros' main headquarters, but it had become even larger than Ouroboros at its peak. Its monthly expenditure was easily dozens of times larger than Ouroboros' had been. This was why the various first-rate guilds feared the various superpowers. Not only could a superpower crush a first-rate guild under its military might, but it could also launch an economic assault. Meanwhile, after Shifeng's party returned to Starmoon Kingdom's White River City, he sent Fire Dance and the others to continue their team dungeon raids and collect as many epic materials as possible to prepare for the auction arena. It's about time that I deal with my elemental cores. Shifeng grinned as he opened his bag to inspect the elemental cores within. He then altered his appearance using the demon mask and visited White River City's teleportation hall. Spending 4 gold, 30 silver, he teleported to the distant Sea of Illusion. Chapter 2079. Sea Tribe Weapon. Sea of Illusion, Blue Coral City. Shifeng was disguised as a level 61 swordsman as he walked through Blue Coral City's streets. Unlike the kingdoms and empires on the God's Domain continent, the Sea of Illusion was neutral territory, maintained by a merchant alliance. The merchant alliance mainly operated out at sea, controlling only a few cities on land. Most of its towns and cities had been established on islands. Because of this, most visiting players were either merchant players or independent players. Guilds rarely visited the Sea of Illusion. This was also why adventurer teams ruled over the area's several major cities. Meanwhile, Blue Coral City was the Sea of Illusion's largest city. First-time visitors were almost always surprised by what they found here. The majority of the player population consisted of merchant players, while the rest were mostly independent players. There were very few players wearing guild emblems. Buying tons of Sea Tribe weapons for 50 silver each. Also selling purple fire crystals. Selling ocean pearls. Get a 5% discount for buying more than 100 pearls. Urgently selling 3 Sea Tribe weapons for 1 gold, 70 silver. Players busied themselves as they set up stalls along the city streets, selling a large variety of items. This wasn't typical of cities in normal kingdoms and empires. Sea Tribe weapons? Shifeng slowed to a halt when he heard the advertising players. He vaguely remembered that Sea Tribe weapons had been popular for a time during his previous life. They had once been items that all naval players had desired. The Sea Tribe weapons could be traded to the Sea of Illusion's NPC forgers to commission crafted weapons, which would allow players to exhibit greater combat power in battles at sea. Weapons that had been made with Sea Tribe weapons were 15% to 20% stronger than normal weapons of the same rank, a considerable improvement. Only, trying to craft a high-quality naval weapon was not easy, and the production success rate wasn't 100%. If one wanted to commission a level 60 secret silver weapon, they'd need 3 Sea Tribe weapons, and the production success rate would only be 50%. A level 60 fine gold weapon would cost 5 level 60 C tribe weapons, and the success rate was only 30%. To put it simply, the higher the desired weapons quality was, the more C tribe weapons a player would need, and the lower the production success rate would be. Meanwhile, players could only acquire C tribe weapons by killing the level 50+ members of the C tribe. Hence, complete naval weapons were incredibly expensive on the market. Of course, C tribe weapons had another purpose, and Xueqi knew it. Purchasing secret laws. Secret laws were extremely rare in God's domain, even rarer than combat techniques. They also provided players a significant boost. Secret laws were a type of berserk skill, but unlike normal berserk skills, which were prohibited in certain areas, secret laws could be used anywhere like combat techniques. They could even be used when silenced. However, secret laws were a huge burden on the user's stamina and concentration. The more powerful a secret law was, the more stamina and concentration it would consume. In addition, players didn't have to master a secret law to use it. Only, using an unmastered secret law would drain more resources than usual. The worst part was that secret laws would drop automatically when players died. Even so, countless experts in God's domain coveted secret laws due to their many benefits. Secret laws provided a boost to physique and allowed players to exhibit more of their combat power. Moreover, secret laws gave players a clearer idea of their flaws. These were the reasons that players had coveted secret laws. They were even more valuable than combat techniques. Meanwhile, C tribe weapons could be exchanged for one of these precious secret laws. Although there were limited copies of the secret law available and the process of acquiring one was particularly troublesome, Xueqi didn't mind. He might have had some trouble purchasing a few copies if he had tried before visiting the ancient god's maze, but he shouldn't have any issues now. One needed to fulfill two conditions to purchase copies of the secret law. First, they'd need to locate the NPC that sold them. Then, they'd need to obtain the required items for payment. The NPC only accepted a combination of C tribe weapons and elemental cores. Other than Xueqi, it wasn't likely that any of God's domain's players knew about this NPC, and of course, collecting C tribe weapons and elemental cores wasn't a problem for Xueqi. Following which, Xueqi spent 10 silver to set up a stall in Blue Coral City's business district. Buying C tribe weapons for 60 silver each. Only buying a certain amount. First come, first served. Xueqi shouted, immediately attracting the attention of the players on the street. Normally, players only purchased C tribe weapons for 50 silver each. Even players that set up stalls to sell the weapons asked for less than 60 silver. With someone willing to spend so much on each C tribe weapon, players were bound to notice. A short moment later, a large group of players crowded around Xueqi to sell their C tribe weapons, rapidly depleting Xueqi's funds. In less than an hour, Xueqi had spent more than 2,000 gold, purchasing 4,352 C tribe weapons. He had basically purchased every C tribe weapon in Blue Coral City. Once customers stopped visiting his stall, he packed up and headed for a hotel to alter his appearance once more. When Xueqi left the hotel, he discovered several players hiding around a street corner, staring intently at the hotel's entrance. It was obvious that these players wanted to learn why he had bought so many C tribe weapons. Unperturbed, Xueqi found a deserted location and used the 7 Luminaries ring to teleport out of Blue Coral City. After using space movement and spatial gate 4 times in a row, Xueqi arrived on a volcanic island that housed monsters ranging from level 80 and level 100. These monsters were far from ordinary, with the weakest among them a chieftain that had the combat power to rival players who reached the Trial Tower's 3rd floor. Even ordinary Tier 2 experts of the same level would have a difficult time fighting these chieftains one-on-one. Meanwhile, the NPC that possessed the secret law copies was located in a hidden room within the volcano. Players had only learned of this NPC in the past thanks to a few players who had visited the island for a rare quest. They had accidentally stumbled across the secret room, finding this rare NPC. Very quickly, with the help of Gale Domain, Xueqi reached a cave inside the volcano. After killing several hundred level 83+ Lord-ranked lava monsters, he finally found a hidden room. Although the cave's monsters were all lords, they had dropped almost no loot. They hadn't dropped anything beyond some ordinary materials, not even a single piece of common equipment. Although the monsters' loot was terrible, the EXP they granted was astounding. After killing several hundred monsters, Xueqi had finally risen from level 70 to 71. As he opened the door to the hidden room, Xueqi was greeted by the sight of a dark, empty room. It only contained a stone platform. Xueqi grew a little excited as he approached the platform, spending 100 magic crystals to light the candle upon it without hesitation. By the time the public had discovered this place in the past, the players that had pioneered the island had cleaned out the NPC's stock of secret law copies. Although the stock would replenish from time to time, the various superpowers had already laid claim and monopolized the NPC. Small guilds like Shadow had only been able to watch and drool from the sidelines. As the candle wick ignited, a storm abruptly enveloped the room. The translucent figure of a man began to materialize before Xueqi. After an inspection, one would discover that this man was a level 80, Tier 2 professional mage named Horus. However, when Xueqi inspected the man with omniscient eyes, he discovered that the NPC was actually a level 180, Tier 5 divine mage. If players gave in to their greed and tried to rob this NPC, only death would await them, a particularly cruel death. Young adventurer, are you the one who has awakened me? Horus asked as he watched Xueqi with eyes swallowed by dark blue flames, his gaze chilling. Yes, Lord Horus. Xueqi nodded respectfully. As a deceased entity, Horus abhorred the living. If Xueqi disrespected him, he'd get nothing from this NPC. Very good. When I was alive, the king of the sea tribe hunted me down and killed me. Now, I want revenge on the sea tribe. However, I cannot leave this place, so I want you to be my instrument of vengeance, slaying the sea tribe's members. As proof of your achievement, you may bring me the sea tribe's unique weapons. Once you complete this task, I will reward you handsomely, Horus said. Although the NPC's tone was calm, the rage in his eyes was apparent. System: you have accepted the epic quest, The Wrath of the Dead. Quest content: kill sea tribe members and obtain 3,000 sea tribe weapons. Rewards unknown. Chapter 2080. Epic Rank Reward. An epic quest? Xueqi was slightly astonished when he heard the system notification. He had never heard of Horus giving out an epic quest in the past. He had only known that this NPC wanted sea tribe weapons in a bid for vengeance against the sea tribe. The quest in the past had only been an advanced hidden quest, requiring 1,000 sea tribe weapons to complete, and a player had to finish the quest before they could trade with Horus. Now, not only was the quest epic rank, but its completion also required 3,000 sea tribe weapons. This massive change ruined his plans. In the past, the activation quest had awarded the Ocean's Heart design, an intermediate magic array design. Although Ocean's Heart was only a barrier-type magic array, it could suppress sea monsters to a frightening extent. Ocean's Heart was even effective against mythic monsters and extremely useful to guilds trying to develop their naval prowess. The Ocean's Heart's magic array scrolls had sold for astronomical prices in the past. Of course, now that the quest had changed, its reward would be different as well. It seems I'll have to come up with a different method. Xueqi sighed deeply as he handed Horus 3,000 sea tribe weapons. The various major powers on the main continent had already reached a developmental bottleneck. As a result, these powers had begun to compete over the sea's resources. Fortunately, Zero Wing already had its own shipyard, many advanced speedboats, and control of several coastal towns and naval cities. Immortal Light, Zero Wing's subordinate, had also been developing its naval strength under Xueqi's orders and was now a significant power at sea. However, with how quickly the various major powers were developing, Zero Wing would struggle to maintain these advantages. Xueqi had wanted to rely on the Ocean's Heart to accelerate the guild's development at sea, but now, he had no choice but to look for other avenues. As Xueqi gave Horus the sea tribe weapons, the NPC's eyes glowed with excitement. Wonderful! There are indeed 3,000 sea tribe weapons here. Horus nodded in satisfaction, his hand abruptly flashing with a bright glow. When the light subsided, he held an ancient tome. I went to great lengths to obtain this book. Hopefully you can make good use of it. If you obtain more sea tribe weapons in the future, you can find me to trade them. When Horus finished speaking, not only did Xueqi obtain the tome, but he also earned an abundance of EXP. Not only did he instantly level up from 71 to 72, but he also gained 2 additional legacy skill points from completing the quest. the quest rewards were incredible. It was much harder to level up after reaching level 70, and Shifeng's hidden class required twice as much EXP as normal players. An ancient forging book? Shifeng's eyes widened in shock when he inspected the book he had earned from Horus. Ocean's Heart didn't have much use to individual players, but the magic array was quite important to guilds. If possible, he wanted to trade 3,000 Sea Tribe weapons for the array design. However, after seeing the ancient forging book, this thought vanished. In God's domain, ancient forging books were akin to alchemy secret journals. Not only were they unique items, but the weapon or equipment designs they contained were also extraordinary. An ancient forging book was almost as valuable as an ordinary epic forging design. Shifeng immediately opened the ancient forging book, eager to discover what item it would help produce. Amazing! I struck gold this time. Shifeng could not help his growing elation as he read the tome's contents. The ancient forging book Horus had given him didn't contain one weapon or equipment piece design. Rather, it contained the designs to produce the dark gold set equipment, crystal light set. Although it was only a level 60 to level 80 set, it was an 8-piece set equipment, possessing more set effects than its 6-piece counterparts. If a level 60 player equipped the crystal light set, their combat power would be on par with a player wearing a 6-piece level 65 dark gold set equipment. At this stage of the game, the various superpowers could only dream of owning 6-piece level 65 dark gold set equipment. Anyone seen wearing such a set would even earn peak experts' envy. Of course, the crystal light set had harsh production requirements. At the very least, one needed to be a basic master forger to forge the set, and the required materials were extremely rare. For example, the set required a lot of fine titan or mana stones and advanced magic cores, all of which were incredibly difficult to procure at this stage of the game, even for the various large guilds. However, material gathering was a secondary concern. The high production cost was far more important. If Shifeng calculated the cost according to current market prices, each production attempt would cost roughly 800 gold. Furthermore, a basic master forger wouldn't have more than a 30% success rate when trying to forge the set. Even intermediate master forgers would only have a 35% success rate, while advanced master forgers would have a 40% chance. Even if one were lucky, they'd still spend nearly 2,400 gold to produce one crystal light set. Although Zero Wing earned a lot of coins each day, most of those coins had to be spent on paying back debts. Shifeng still needed to pay back the astronomical construction cost for Silverwing Town's airport. Moreover, he had instructed Aqua Rose to invest funds into the Lost Town's development in secret to enable the guild to nurture more experts in a short time. In addition, Zero Wing had to fund Immortal Light's development and purchase epic materials for the upcoming auction house competition. Right now, the guild only had around 20,000 gold available for emergencies. If he wanted to mass-produce the crystal light set and form a personal security team like Nature Manifestations, he'd need a lot more coins. Thinking up to this point, Shifeng traded 1,200 Sea Tribe weapons and 1,500 elemental cores for 3 copies of the basic secret law, Deep Sea Meditation. Shifeng could only return later to trade for Horus's remaining 3 copies. Deep Sea Meditation, Basic Secret Law, allows the user to exhibit their body's latent potential through meditation, significantly improving their physique. This secret law consumes a lot of stamina and concentration when used. Drops upon death. After purchasing the secret law copies, Shifeng left to find the 4-star wandering merchant using the 7 luminaries ring. After teleporting 5 times, Shifeng arrived in a secret land. He then spent the next 4 hours clearing out the level 80+ monsters that stood in his way before locating a small wooden house. A gray-robed, elderly man called Zol, one of 3 4-star wandering merchants in the Sea of Illusion, occupied the house. After meeting with Zol, Shifeng purchased all 500 stamina gemstones the NPC had, each gemstone costing 5 elemental cores. He couldn't have dreamed of doing something like this in his previous life. This NPC simply required too many elemental cores. If he hadn't obtained the 6,752 elemental cores while grinding in the ancient god's secret maze, he wouldn't have dared to purchase both the secret law copies and the stamina gemstones. When the public had discovered Zol in the past, the various superpowers had monopolized the NPC's stock. These powers left very few gemstones for other players once they had finished with Zol. Hence, It was a dream for Xueqi to purchase 500 stamina gemstones in a single transaction now. The several players that had discovered Zal in the past had only purchased around 200 stamina gemstones. Even so, they had made a fortune, earning the various large guilds' envy. Following which, Xueqi took out a return scroll and teleported back to White River City. Chapter 2081. Stormy Winds. Starmoon Kingdom, White River City. Although White River City was not the kingdom's capital, its popularity overshadowed Starmoon City as the main headquarters of the kingdom's #1 guild and home to the Candlelight trading firm, which continued to introduce one new product after another. At this point, White River City had become the kingdom's capital in the hearts of Starmoon Kingdom's players. Since White River City was the only city in the kingdom to be promoted, its fame had reached new heights. Tons of players from foreign cities and countries visited the city every day, and it had become almost as prosperous as an ordinary empire's imperial capital. Over a dozen level 64 players in gorgeous equipment had gathered on the second floor of White River City's auction house. They all wore the same guild emblem as they watched the fight in the auction arena. Contempt filled their eyes as they looked down on the combatants. As expected of a small kingdom. Although the local players' equipment standards are quite good, their combat standards are terrible. They're not even a match for some second-rate guilds in our Dark Knight Empire. It's no wonder why Zero Wing lords over Starmoon Kingdom, a level 64 berserker said as he watched several guild players from Starmoon Kingdom fight in the auction arena in ridicule. The berserker had not held back his opinion. With the physique of Tier 2 players, the combatants had heard him clearly even from 50 yards away. However, none of those players dared to comment against the berserker. They all simply lowered their heads and remained silent. This berserker had earned the right to such arrogance. This level 64 berserker had won 20 matches in the auction arena in a row. Quite a few of the berserker's opponents had been peak experts from Starmoon Kingdom, but none of them had dropped the berserker's HP below 80%. This berserker had even fought 2 opponents at once and still maintained his HP above 80%, winning the match. Moreover, the berserker's identity was extraordinary. This berserker was Dust Blood, one of the 10 great experts from the Dark Knight Empire's Bloodbath family. The Bloodbath family was a veteran first-rate guild, and at this point, it was the strongest guild in the Dark Knight Empire, excluding the 3 resident superpowers. The Bloodbath family also occupied a medium-sized kingdom and a small-sized kingdom. No ordinary first-rate guild could hope to compare to its strength. Although these guilds are very weak, Zero Wing's title as Starmoon Kingdom's overlord proves that it has some ability. Furthermore, Zero Wing has 4 experts that rank on the God's Domain experts list. Black Flame in particular has killed many superpowers peak experts thus far, a young man in dark grey robes said. Zero Wing's name had already become commonplace in the Dark Knight Empire. After all, the guild had successfully helped the 100 Flowers Palace stop Starlink's invasion in Moon Creek Town. The incident had surprised the Empire's various guilds, all of which had immediately investigated Zero Wing. However, the more they looked into Zero Wing, the more the guilds surprised them. These guilds hadn't been surprised by Zero Wing's rapid development in God's Domain, but by the number of frightening powers Zero Wing had provoked. The Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's 9 Dragons Emperor, the Evil God's Temple, Pantheon, Blackwater, Miracle, and the Dark Knight Empire's Starlink. All of these guilds were powerful enough to make even a first-rate guild like Bloodbath family shudder in fear. Yet Zero Wing had provoked every one of them. The fact that Zero Wing had survived this long was unbelievable. Calling it a miracle wasn't an exaggeration. Zero Wing's success will soon reach its end. The various superpowers have been busy with their own matters, so none of them have bothered to retaliate. I've also heard that Zero Wing has a tentative alliance with the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion's Phoenix Rain. But things have changed. The various superpowers have set their sights on White River City, and even if Phoenix Rain makes a personal appearance, she can't change Zero Wing's fate, Dustblood said, sneering. The fact that Zero Wing had 4 experts that ranked on the God's Domain experts list was impressive to other guilds. But the achievement meant nothing to the various superpowers. The God's Domain experts list focused on players' battle records, not their overall strength. God's Domain had many experts that hadn't accumulated eye-catching battle records, yet wielded peerless strength. Take the Bloodbath family, for example. Bloodbath family's expert members were even stronger than the refinement realm experts on the God's Domain experts list, but none of them had actually made it on the list. To put it simply, only small guilds and independent players took the God's Domain experts list seriously. It was merely an information source for true major powers, not an indicator of a guild's strength. Moreover, the competition for an NPC city's auction house didn't rely on war weapons or tools. Instead, it relied on a guild's resources and experts. The competition prohibited artificial strength, so the war weapon Zero Wing had been lucky enough to acquire would be useless. With how few experts Zero Wing possessed, it wouldn't even be able to defeat veteran first-rate guilds like Bloodbath family, much less the various superpowers. I guess you're right. The various superpowers will not give up on White River City's auction house. Some of the old monsters that usually hide in the shadows are even revealing themselves to ensure their guild's success in the competition. Even experts on the God's Domain experts list will be of limited use. The young man nodded in agreement. When he spoke of the various superpowers' old monsters, fear and yearning flashed in his eyes. Thus far, the fights between God's Domain superpowers had been nothing more than skirmishes. Large-scale battles between these major powers were rare. Moreover, to nurture the younger generation, the various superpowers' true experts typically avoided their guild's affairs. They kept to themselves, quietly increasing their strength. If these old monsters took action, how would the younger generation acquire any fame? Even the younger generation's greatest prodigy was a joke before these old monsters. Zero Wing is certainly unlucky. It could have remained the king of its mountain for some time. Unfortunately, White River City was promoted too quickly. Now, even its dream of standing atop its mountain as king would shatter. I've heard that even King's Return, Blackwater, and Pantheon have arrived to compete for White River City. I can't wait to see these superpowers tear Zero Wing apart, Dustblood said, smiling. Oh, look over there. Even the Glory Empire's holy reincarnation has come. It seems that they're here to watch the fight between these superpowers as well, the young man said suddenly as he pointed to a group of or so players that had just arrived in the second-floor hall with a smirk. Holy Reincarnation was also a veteran first-rate guild, strong enough to rival the Bloodbath family. It was also the second strongest guild, after King's Return, in the Glory Empire. While the various kingdoms and empires' powers gathered in White River City in anticipation of the auction house's struggle, Xueqi worked on crafting the crystal light set in the nearby candlelight trading firm. Although up to 10 players could learn the crystal light set's production method from the ancient forging book, it was an 8-piece dark gold set equipment. Not even basic master forgers like Melancholic Smile and Cream Cocoa would have much success with forging the set. Furthermore, Melancholic Smile and the others had their own work to focus on. Hence, Xueqi decided to craft the set equipment himself. Fortunately, acquiring the required materials was no trouble for Xueqi. Zero Wing had been growing stronger as time passed, and as a result, it had compiled a ton of materials in the guild warehouse. In addition, the candlelight trading firm had joined the secret chamber of commerce. So, obtaining the necessary materials to forge the crystal light set equipment was quite easy for the guild. In fact, Xueqi had gathered more than a dozen sets of materials in less than an hour. He then refined the materials with the soul fire. Using the Philosopher's Hand's ability, Xueqi continued to shape one set piece after another. Before he put the finishing touches on the 8-piece set, Xueqi retrieved 40 grains of temporal sand. Temporal sand was incredibly valuable, with each grain selling for more than 20 gold on the market. Not only could it increase one's production success rate, but it could also strengthen the crafted item. Xueqi allocated 5 grains of temporal sand for each set piece, the maximum amount dark gold equipment could handle. If he hadn't had the Bracelet of Time, he wouldn't have dared to use the temporal sand so extravagantly. The crystal light set equipment then radiated a dazzling glow, illuminating the entire room. As the light faded, it revealed 8 pieces of equipment, glowing with a sparkling light and radiating an ancient violent aura. Chapter 2082. Timeless Equipment. Did it succeed? Xueqi could not help but grow a little excited as he gazed at the 8-piece set equipment on the table before him. Although he had more than 10 sets of materials on hand, the crystal light set was top-tier dark gold set equipment. Its production difficulty only second to epic equipment. Although he had already become an intermediate master forger and with the help of the Philosopher's Hand, performed as an advanced master forger, Successfully forging the crystal light set was incredibly difficult. Theoretical success rate, after all, had nothing to do with the actual forging process. In the game's early stages, the main god system had simplified the various production processes to their base limits to allow players to familiarize themselves with god's domain subclasses. However, as players reached higher levels and adapted, the main god system would gradually withdraw its assistance, and the various production processes would become more complex and detailed. Meanwhile, successfully forging a dark gold set equipment was a massive threshold for lifestyle players. During God's domain's ancient times, weapons and equipment had only fallen into two categories: ordinary and extraordinary. More categories had only been added after the ancient gods had fallen. Ordinary equipment split into bronze, mysterious, iron, secret silver, fine gold, and dark gold ranks. Extraordinary equipment had been broken down into epic and legendary. Dark gold weapons and equipment were considered the peak of ordinary equipment, hence, they were extremely difficult to obtain and produce. Without a larger power support, an ordinary expert player would be limited to dark gold weapons and equipment at best. Meanwhile, dark gold set equipment was at the very apex of ordinary equipment, the best available without any flaws. No matter how high one raised their theoretical production success rate, a single mistake would result in failure. There was no room for error when crafting dark gold set equipment. One could argue that crafting dark gold set equipment was even more difficult than producing epic items, since the latter allowed for some mistakes. Only, the theoretical production success rate was much lower compared to dark gold set equipment. As Xueqi began to inspect the crystal light set before him, the sound of a system notification reached his ears. System: crystal light set has been successfully forged. Forging proficiency increased by 200 points. Obtained 10 million EXP. As expected of an 8-piece, dark gold set equipment, it provided so much proficiency. Xueqi was elated when he saw the system notification. Even forging ordinary dark gold weapons and equipment awarded very little proficiency after reaching intermediate master rank. Normally, he'd be lucky to get 3 points for each success. This was why a player needed so much time to rise to advanced master rank after becoming an intermediate master. Now, forging a single crystal light set awarded 200 proficiency points, the equivalent of crafting nearly 70 pieces of dark gold equipment. However, the crystal light set's attributes were the true reason for Xueqi's joy, not the system's reward. The crystal light set was a top-tier dark gold set equipment, and due to the enhancement the temporal sand provided, the 8 pieces' basic attributes had risen by 10%. Purely comparing basic attributes, ordinary epic equipment had around 20% to 30% higher attributes than the normal crystal light set, but the temporal sand had reduced that by 10%. There was no doubt that the set equipment before him was currently the best ordinary equipment available in the game. If he hadn't been wearing several pieces of epic equipment with beneficial effects, Xueqi would have immediately replaced his items with the crystal light set. Of course, Xueqi didn't stop after this success. He immediately began to forge the next set. As time continued to flow, the day of the auction house's struggle had finally arrived. White River City was particularly lively. Today, the various powers would battle to determine their future territories. As a result, countless players from Stormy Kingdom and its neighbors had gathered in White River City. At this point, the city's player population exceeded 50 million. If not for White River City's traffic restriction, there would have been several times more players in the city. Today, even the various large guilds' elusive upper echelons gathered in the city's auction house. Representatives from more than 2,000 different guilds had come to participate in the competition. Moreover, a large number of adventurer teams and dark powers had arrived to participate in the day's events. With so many powers, ordinary players didn't even qualify to walk into the auction house and were barred from entering the building. The city's independent players watched the various major powers members enter the auction house in envy. For today only, players needed to carry at least one epic material to enter White River City's auction house. Otherwise, regardless of how powerful or wealthy one was, they wouldn't get past the doors and were forced to wait outside. Even so, a large crowd had gathered outside the building to watch the competition. These players hadn't gathered because they had nothing better to do, but because the system had set up several colossal magic mirrors to broadcast the events along the business district. Anyone on the streets or resting in one of the city's establishments would be able to watch the spectacular competition for dominance over the auction house. Meanwhile, two players, one old and the other young, sat in one of the auction house's top-floor VIP rooms. From this spectator's room, these two would have a full view of the auction arena below, which easily accommodated more than 100,000 players. If the various large guilds' upper echelons saw that only two people occupied this spacious VIP room, they'd curse them for being wasteful. Renting the auction house's top-floor VIP rooms cost 5 epic materials. Although epic materials were not as valuable as epic weapons or equipment, they were still extremely difficult to obtain. First-rate guilds would be fortunate to collect several dozen epic materials, and none of them would dare to spend 5 epic items just for a better view of the auction arena. Amazing! A city like White River City has actually attracted so many superpowers. Mu Ling Sha, the VIP room's younger occupant, exclaimed as she watched the various participating superpowers enter the arena. Starlink, Blackwater, Pantheon, and King's Return weren't the only superpowers present. Members of the Secret Pavilion, Sacred Temple, and Crimson Emperor had also come to participate. It's only natural. Although Star Moon Kingdom is only a medium-sized kingdom, an NPC city's auction house is incredibly important. If they can claim this city's auction house, they can earn a stable income. Moreover, Star Moon Kingdom has a gold mine like the Witch's Hill. With so many benefits up for grabs, it is only natural that many superpowers have been tempted into action, the elderly man beside Mu Lingsha explained, smiling. If Crimson Emperor or Starlink's upper echelons saw this elder, they'd likely be astonished. This elderly man was Unknown King, Unyielding Soul's previous guild leader. When he had run the guild, it had risen to glory, but due to his age and his body's deterioration, he had retired from the front lines more than 2 decades ago. Grandpa, does Zero Wing really have no hope of holding White River City? Mu Lingsha could not help but ask. She was grateful to Zero Wing for all the help it had provided thus far. Moreover, her good friend, Aqua Rose, was a member of the guild. If another power stole White River City, which served as Zero Wing's main headquarters, Zero Wing would suffer for it. None. Even if our guild lends Zero Wing a hand, I'm afraid that holding White River City would still be impossible, Unknown King said, shaking his head. Not even our help could change the situation? Mu Lingsha was surprised. Although Unyielding Soul had been declining, it was still a veteran first-rate guild. Ordinary first-rate guilds still were no match for its strength. You're severely underestimating the participating superpowers. Although we are a superpower as well, their backgrounds and foundations are many times stronger than Unyielding Souls. Any other time, they might have backed off out of respect for our guild, but this competition will determine their future in God's domain. None of them will show respect for the others. Furthermore, Zero Wing has provoked too many superpowers, pushing them to the limits of their tempers. Now, nobody can save Zero Wing, Unknown King said, sighing. Mu Lingsha lowered her head in disappointment. While the various major powers entered the auction house and eagerly awaited the competition's start, a group of players wearing 6-winged emblems entered the arena. The leader of this group was none other than Xueqi. Chapter 2083 Grand Gathering. When Zero Wing's members arrived, the atmosphere in the auction arena changed immediately. The various major powers' representatives couldn't help but shift their gazes to Zero Wing's players. Not only was Zero Wing Star Moon Kingdom's overlord, but its main headquarters was also located in White River City. Moreover, it had amazing growth potential and a very high chance of becoming a super first-rate guild in the future. To put it simply, the guild was in its heyday. If Zero Wing secured the management rights to White River City's auction house, not only would it solidify its position as the kingdom's overlord, but it would also have a stable source of income, further increasing its chances of becoming a superpower. However, rather than envying Zero Wing's players, the various major powers members only watched them with pity or delight. They actually dared to show up. Dust Blood, who stood outside of the arena, sneered when he saw Zero Wing's members. Do they really think that they can secure this auction house just because their headquarters is located here? Zero Wing had only dispatched a little over 100 players to the auction arena. It was a significant number compared to the various large guilds, who had only sent around 30 players each. In fact, the size of its group was only second to the various participating superpowers. However, most of the large guilds attending the competition were only there to spectate. They didn't actually plan to compete, so they hadn't needed to send a lot of members. The fact that Zero Wing had sent so many players proved its intentions. The guild would be participating in the competition. Although Zero Wing was Star Moon Kingdom's overlord, the Bloodbath family simply considered the guild a mere mountain king. It wasn't an issue if Zero Wing strutted around its kingdom normally. However, even the Bloodbath family had only sent around 40 players to such a grand event to gain experience. Yet Zero Wing had dispatched more than 100 players to try to win this competition. Zero Wing simply overestimated itself. Maybe Zero Wing is putting up a final fight for its survival, the gray-robed young man said, sighing. After all was said and done, White River City was Zero Wing's main headquarters. If another power claimed the city's auction house, Zero Wing would lose the foundation it had spent so much time to build. The loss would be unimaginably dire for the guild. The competition for dominance in God's domain grew more intense as time passed. If a guild failed to keep up with the changing times, the gap between it and others would only grow. Losing one's main headquarters during these rapidly changing times would be fatal, especially for a new guild like Zero Wing. Its members had yet to acquire a sense of belonging and cohesiveness with how recently the guild had been established, and it wouldn't be surprising to see Zero Wing disband shortly after losing White River City. Unfortunately, everything weaker than the various superpowers was nothing more than an ant. This was the case true for a top-ranked first-rate guild like the Bloodbath family. At one time, the Bloodbath family had been recognized as a pseudo-super first-rate guild, but it was still no match for Starlink, Unyielding Soul, and Crimson Emperor in the Dark Knight Empire. The Bloodbath family was also wise enough not to harbor thoughts of antagonizing these three superpowers. In the virtual gaming world, unless one was on the brink of becoming a superpower, they couldn't truly understand what a superpower was. To the various guilds and players in God's domain, superpowers were, at most, guilds with greater financial strength and more experts than their weaker companions. Most didn't understand that the difference between a superpower and an ordinary power didn't lay in quantity, but in quality. Otherwise, the Bloodbath family would have become a super first-rate guild long ago, rather than the pseudo-super first-rate guild it was after so many years of development. Several dozen players in level 60 fine gold and dark gold equipment stood some distance away from the Bloodbath family group. These several dozen players radiated such intense killing intent as they watched Zero Wing's members that other guild experts around them kept their distance. However, the other experts weren't afraid of these layers because of the dense killing intent they radiated. Instead, they were wary because those players wore Sin Realm's guild emblem. Sin Realm was the Purple Thorns Kingdom's absolute overlord. Unlike Zero Wing, which only controlled a little more than a dozen major NPC cities in Star Moon Kingdom, Sin Realm controlled every NPC city in the Purple Thorns Kingdom. Ordinary guilds couldn't afford to provoke it. To think that even you would have such a day, Zero Wing. Skyview, Warring Empire's former guild leader, said gleefully, a hint of madness flashing in his eyes as he watched Shifeng's group. After Zero Wing had destroyed Golden Flow Town, the Warring Empire had perished in Star Moon Kingdom. In the end, he had no choice but to migrate to the Purple Thorns Kingdom and join Sin Realm with some of his trusted subordinates. He had instantly fallen from a guild's leader to an ordinary elder. He hated Zero Wing deeply for this. Unfortunately, he hadn't had any opportunities for revenge against the guild since Zero Wing was so powerful, especially with its war weapons. Even the various superpowers likely had headaches when dealing with Zero Wing's arsenal, much less a former guild leader. Fortunately, the heavens would not forsake the faithful. After such a long wait, he finally had the chance to watch the moment Zero Wing fell from its throne. Zero Wing has gotten too full of itself after acquiring its powerful war weapons and blatantly proving superpowers left and right. The guild is too young. Now that the situation in God's domain has changed, Zero Wing can only blame itself for its downfall, Lone Beacon, who sat beside Skyview, calmly commented. One should never casually provoke a superpower. Take Sin Realm for example. Despite so many experts and support from powerful corporations, Sin Realm only dared to call itself overlord in its own kingdom. It actively avoided superpowers' territories. However, Zero Wing repeated provoked superpowers even with no backing. Even Lone Beacon admired the guild's courage. However, regardless of Zero Wing's powerful war weapons, White River City would have a new owner today. While the various major powers discussed Zero Wing, a group of players entered the auction arena, causing a massive uproar. What? Even Nature Hall's members have come. Everyone was surprised to see Nature Hall's members in the arena. Nature Hall was one of the fastest-growing superpowers in God's domain. Not only did it control the Storm Empire, but it also had close relations with several powerful top adventurer teams in the game. Although these top adventurer teams weren't as large as superpowers, they had extraordinarily strong experts. It was rumored that some of these experts could even rival super first-rate guilds and super guilds' peak experts, with some even rivaling superpowers' old monsters. Hence, even the various superpowers avoided provoking Nature Hall right now. The Storm Empire is so far away from Starmoon Kingdom. Logically, there's no reason for Nature Hall to contest for White River City. Could it be here because of the issue with Twilight Echo? That's most likely the case. Otherwise, Nature Hall wouldn't have sent Deep Thunder, its first vice guild leader. Furthermore, no one knows what Zero Wing did to convince Nature Hall to give up on Twilight Echo, and because of this, Nature Hall has been humiliated in the Storm Empire. Zero Wing is definitely dead now. It had already provoked Blackwater and Starlink, and now, even Nature Hall has shown up. After today, Zero Wing will have no place in White River City. As everyone discussed Nature Hall's presence, they agreed that Zero Wing was truly doomed. Even other superpowers would suffer if they had to face three rising superpowers like Blackwater, Starlink, and Nature Hall, not to mention Zero Wing. Meanwhile, when Mu Lingsha saw Nature Hall's members from her top-floor VIP room, her expression turned grim. It's over. It's really over. Blackwater, Starlink, and Nature Hall. Every one of these guilds was stronger than Unyielding Soul. Not even her guild would casually provoke any of these three superpowers, yet Zero Wing had angered all of them. All of Zero Wing's enemies smiled joyfully, especially Skyview and Shadowlight Axe, the former guild leaders of Warring Empire and Knight's Judgment. Meanwhile, after arriving, Deep Thunder and his team headed towards Zero Wing's members. But as everyone expected a fight to break out. Guild leader Black Flame, after such a short time apart, it seems that you've grown stronger yet again, Deep Thunder said amicably as he approached Xueqi. Our guild leader has sent me with a specific order to help Zero Wing in this competition. If you encounter any trouble, please feel free to use my team and me as you see fit. Please send my gratitude to Guild Leader Nature. Zero Wing will remember this kindness, Xueqi said, nodding. He realized that Nature Hall was trying to befriend his guild. Not at all. It's a small matter. When Deep Thunder heard Xueqi's reply, he grinned with greater delight, recognizing that Xueqi had accepted Nature Hall's attempt to form a friendship with Zero Wing. When the various major powers representatives saw this, their jaws dropped in shock. Chapter 2084. There's more than one backer. What's going on? Isn't Nature Hall here to cause trouble for Zero Wing? Deep Thunder's behavior stupefied the various major powers. They could not understand what Nature Hall was trying to pull. Are those people using disguises? The Bloodbath family's Dust Blood muttered in confusion. Nature Hall had already grown stronger than super first-rate guilds like the Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and Unyielding Soul. Such a powerful guild should disdain ordinary super first-rate guilds, let alone Zero Wing. However, after watching the exchange between Xueqi and Deep Thunder, one would think that Zero Wing was the true superpower, not Nature Hall. No matter how Dust Blood considered the situation, he couldn't understand what was happening. I've met Deep Thunder personally. Although God's domain has many tools that can disguise a player, they can't replicate a target's strength and aura, the gray-robed young man said, shaking his head. That Deep Thunder looks and feels exactly like the one I've met. Moreover, Deep Thunder wields the Magic Warrior hidden class. You can feel a special kind of mana around him at all times. No tool can duplicate that feeling. Then, why is that Deep Thunder treating Black Flame so graciously? Dust Blood asked, clearly confused. I don't know. Maybe Nature Hall has some secret deal with Black Flame, the young man said. He was just as confused and didn't know how to answer his companion's question. With Nature Hall's strength and development speed, not even the secret pavilion would be able to stop it from targeting Zero Wing without tremendous compensation. The gray-robed young man had no idea what ability Zero Wing possessed to warrant Nature Hall's goodwill. Moreover, Nature Hall seemed to be desperate for Zero Wing's approval. The only explanation he could think of involved some private deal between Black Flame and Nature Hall's core upper echelons, convincing the larger guild to give up on Twilight Echo and support Zero Wing. No wonder why Zero Wing's members seem so fearless. It turns out they actually have Nature Hall support, Dustblood said, sneering. However, a trace of envy and admiration could be seen in his gaze. Although the Bloodbath family was a top-ranked first-rate guild and only a short distance from becoming an actual superpower, it could not afford to provoke some of the small guilds in its territory. Most of those small guilds were backed by superpowers. Even if Zero Wing lost White River City today, it could slowly recuperate its strength. It still wasn't an existence that ordinary powers could afford to provoke. As for Black Flame's private deal with Nature Hall, this was likely the case. After all, Black Flame possessed extraordinary individual strength. It wasn't surprising to find someone so powerful connected to certain influential individuals. In fact, the more Dustblood thought about it, the more it seemed plausible. It certainly explained why Zero Wing dared to provoke Blackwater and Starlink openly. Dustblood wasn't the only one with such thoughts. The various major powers' upper echelons had reached the same conclusion. One should not underestimate Nature Hall just because its territory was smaller than Blackwater and Starlink's. Nature Hall's Storm Empire was a Nor country, far more valuable than the Steel Empire or Dark Knight Empire. Nature Hall had no reason to fear Blackwater or Starlink. Meanwhile, in another corner, Sin Realm's members were silent. The killing intent they radiated had also lessened. None of them had thought that Zero Wing had any backers, but in truth, it seemed that a Titan stood behind the smaller guild. With Nature Hall's assistance, Zero Wing might actually hold White River City and solidify its position as Star Moon Kingdom's overlord. Zero Wing has an alliance with Nature Hall? Glaring hatefully at Xueqi, Skyview hissed. So what if you have Nature Hall's support? Nature Hall might not fear Blackwater and Starlink, but it is only one superpower. There are more than 2 superpowers for White River City. I refuse to believe Nature Hall can defeat them all. Sin Realm's members nodded in agreement. This competition for the auction house was unique. And even if Nature Hall helped Zero Wing defeat the participating superpowers, there were others in God's domain. Zero Wing would not change its fate of losing White River City. However, while the crowd discussed the relationship between Nature Hall and Zero Wing, 2 players, one young and one old, approached Xueqi. These 2 were none other than Mu Lingsha and Unknown King. Guild leader Black Flame. I am Mu Cheng. My granddaughter, Lingsha, has recently been in your care. If Zero Wing encounters any trouble, please feel free to request my help. Although I have withdrawn from the front lines, I dare say that I am still a capable fighter, Unknown King said, chuckling as he glanced at the various major powers in the auction arena. Sin Realm and the other superpowers that were so eager to watch Zero Wing's downfall were stupefied after watching Mu Cheng and Mu Lingsha speak with Xueqi. What? Why is Thousand Hands doing here? What relationship does Zero Wing have with Unyielding Soul to warrant a personal visit from its former guild leader? The auction arena stirred at Mu Cheng's appearance. The various major powers weren't the only ones surprised by this old man's arrival. Many independent players were just as shocked to see Mu Cheng. Mu Cheng was one of the older generation's experts. He had been a big shot in the virtual gaming world when Unyielding Soul had been at its peak, and when he had still been active, everyone had known his nickname, Thousand Hands. He had been known as one of the top 3 assassins in the virtual gaming world. If his physical deterioration hadn't forced him away from the front lines, Unyielding Soul wouldn't have fallen to its current state. Why wouldn't everyone be shocked to see such a big shot greet Zero Wing and offer its help? Deep Thunder, who stood a short distance away, was also surprised to see this old man. He hadn't considered that Zero Wing would have such deep ties to Unyielding Soul, so much so that Unyielding Soul's former guild leader would make a personal appearance. Deep Thunder immediately raised his evaluation of Zero Wing. Who is this Black Flame? 2 superpowers have actually shown up to support him? Dustblood's eyes nearly fell from their sockets when he saw Mu Cheng talk to Xueqi. Although Mu Cheng had retired and was no longer at his peak strength, he could display a significant portion of his abilities with the latest virtual reality technology in God's domain. He definitely shouldn't be underestimated. If Mu Cheng really lent Zero Wing a helping hand, the outcome of this competition would be uncertain. Damn it! Why? This has to be a trick. Skyview was utterly flabbergasted. First, Nature Hall had offered its support, and now, so did Unyielding Soul. He simply couldn't keep up. Unlike the players in the auction arena, the spectating crowd outside grew excited with the sudden development. No one had believed that Zero Wing had any backers, and despite its hopes of becoming a super first-rate guild, its chances were actually quite slim. However, they now realized that they had been mistaken. Not only did Zero Wing have 2 backers, but both were also true superpowers. Factoring in Zero Wing's development speed, the likelihood of it becoming a super first-rate guild was extremely high. Nature Hall and Unyielding Soul? Galaxy Past, who sat in one of the spectator rooms on the 2nd floor, couldn't help his bitter smile as he watched Deep Thunder and Mu Chang. He had thought that Star Alliance had significantly shortened the gap between it and Zero Wing. He hadn't expected that Zero Wing had hidden so much power. He had watched Zero Wing grow from nothing, and he had assumed that he had seen everything the guild had to offer. Unfortunately, it seemed that he still underestimated Zero Wing's strength. Meanwhile, Purple Eye watched Aqua Rose and Gentle Snow, who stood beside their guild leader, in envy. She had thought of the 2 women as rivals, but now they were utterly out of her reach. Now that Zero Wing had the support of 2 superpowers, it could definitely ascend to the upper levels of God's domain in the future. While everyone talked about Zero Wing, a commotion erupted outside of the arena. Shortly after, a group of 400-plus players entered. Even the lowest-leveled player among this group was level 64, with their weakest piece of equipment being level 60 fine gold rank. They all wore Starlink's guild emblem, and the dozen or so players in the lead possessed several epic weapons and equipment, wearing no less than level 60 dark gold items. A faint glow enveloped these dozen or so players as if they were the incarnations of gods. Mu Lingsha was stunned. Not even Unyielding Soul's main force was likely a match for these players. Sure enough, they've come. Mu Cheng's expression gradually became serious as he watched the leaders of Starlink's force. Chapter 2085. Glory. There were many experts in the magnificent auction arena. Some among them even served as pillars in their large guilds, and there were quite a few peak experts from the various superpowers. However, when Starlink's members entered the arena, everyone gasped as they felt the intense pressure emitting from these players. Starlink's members didn't feel like players, but great lords. The crowd subconsciously submitted as those players' aura washed over them. Even peak experts felt the threat of death from the dozen or so Starlink members in the lead. Why are they here? Deep Thunder's expression similarly changed when he saw Starlink's members, surprise and fear flashing in his eyes. Grandpa, who are those people? Why do even superpowers peak experts seem afraid of them? Mu Lingsha could not help but ask as she watched the various spectating superpowers peak experts in confusion. While it was true that Starlink's members were strong, the watching peak experts were as well. Even if there were a difference between superpower strength, there should be no reason for the spectating peak experts to fear Starlink's experts, but every one of their faces twisted with anxiety. Her grandfather, Mu Chang, was a true domain realm expert, and his nickname of Thousand Hands was no trivial matter. Although he had grown weaker with age, he could still easily handle peak experts. However, when her grandfather saw the dozen or so players leading Starlink's team, he seemed to share the spectating experts' trepidation. She found this situation truly baffling. Zero Wing really has no chance in the struggle for White River City now. Mu Chang could not help his bitter smile as he watched Starlink's leading members. He had thought that they could help Zero Wing hold White River City with the combination of Nature Hall's assistance and his fame. After all, the various participating superpowers had their own NPC cities to prioritize. They would only be able to dispatch a limited portion of their strength to secure White River City's auction house. However, it seemed he had underestimated Starlink's feelings towards Zero Wing. Are they really that strong? Mu Lingsha was even more surprised by her grandfather's comment. They're not just strong. Against these people, even veteran superguilds like the Battle Wolves and Sacred Temple would have to take their opponents seriously. Otherwise, their defeat would be almost guaranteed. Mu Chang explained as he watched the 4 white-haired men among Starlink's team. To think that Starlink would recruit the 4 shadow demons. I've known that Starlink has been gathering an extraordinary amount of strength in secret, but I hadn't thought that it was so capable. Even Unyielding Soul is likely in danger. The 4 shadow demons? After giving the name some thought, Mu Lingsha asked in surprise, are they the 4 lunatics that shook up the various superpowers years ago? The 4 shadow demons had been very well known more than a decade ago, but unlike the name suggested, these 4 didn't operate as a group. They hadn't even known each other, acting independently. These 4 people had earned the nickname, 4 shadow demons, because of how much trouble they had caused the various superpowers, killing countless experts and peak experts. Not even Unyielding Soul had been spared from the 4 shadow demons' mischief. All 4 of these players were madmen. Moreover, they were independent players, and as a result, the various superpowers had a very difficult time tracking them down and dealing with them. During the height of their troublemaking, these 4 had been a hot topic among the general populace, so the secret pavilion had named them the 4 Shadow Demons, a nickname that had spread across the virtual gaming world. The various superpowers had the greatest headache trying to deal with players like the 4 Shadow Demons. Not only were they extremely powerful, but they were also insufferable lunatics. With all 4 of these madmen here, it was easy to imagine how frightening this competition would be. Meanwhile, hundreds of players wearing Blackwater's guild emblem sat quietly in one of the top-floor VIP rooms. The inflexible middle-aged man who led the group looked down at Xueqi, watching the swordsman with a smug grin. If Xueqi were there, he would have recognized the middle-aged man as Jingyang, the Blackwater representative that had visited Zero Wing's main headquarters not long ago. Sure enough, Vice Guild leader was right. Starlink has secretly recruited those 4 old ghosts, Jingyang said, smiling. I doubt even Zero Wing would have thought this could happen. Then should we take action now? Snow Scar asked as he glanced at Xueqi. No. It is too soon. Let's wait until the competition officially begins before we teach Zero Wing the meaning of despair. Even if we say nothing, Zero Wing will beg us to take their combat puppets, Jingyang said, laughing. The arena's atmosphere had drastically changed when the 4 shadow demons had appeared. Everyone had been optimistic about Zero Wing's success in the competition. The guild had support from 2 superpowers. Potential was limitless. However, such thoughts had been abandoned. It seems Zero Wing has reached the end of the line. Melody, you better give up now. Zero Wing can no longer back 9th Heaven. Only Setting Sun can ensure 9th Heaven's glory in Forest City. Now, a young, handsome male half-elf said. Zero Wing might have been able to deal with the Death God workshop, but now that it's on the brink of destruction, how could it possibly afford to help your guild? Don't think that Starlink only has the 4 shadow demons. The dozen or so experts around them aren't ordinary, either. Take that blue-armored swordsman, for example. He has earned the nickname Illusion Swordsman, and his combat standards are on par with Miracle Dragons. There's also that tall shield warrior. He's called Mountain Horn and can rival Cuttlefish, the Iron Wall from Crimson Emperor. Every one of those people is an absolute peak expert. Moreover, Starlink has given all of them epic weapons and equipment. Just these people's strength is more than enough to make a super first-rate guild like Unyielding Soul suffer in a bitter battle. Not to mention a guild like Zero Wing. Could Zero Wing really be doomed? Melody wondered as she looked at Xueqi. She had no rebuttal for the half-elf man. He had only spoken the truth. Even with 2 supporting superpowers, Zero Wing wasn't a match for the full force of another superpower. Unlike Melody's despair, Skyview was overjoyed. So what if you have 2 superpowers to support you, Black Flame? It can't change the fact that you will watch as someone takes White River City from you. Skyview threw his head back and laughed. When he had watched one big shot after another stand up for Zero Wing, he had sighed at his own weakness. But who would have thought that the situation would change so drastically in the blink of an eye? Zero Wing had enjoyed endless glory in the auction arena since it arrived, but in the end, it was still an ant on the chessboard of God's domain. The guild was still easy prey for superpowers. As everyone chatted amongst themselves, a bell abruptly rang, echoing throughout White River City as it signaled the start of the auction arena's competition. Chapter 2086. Expert Foundations. White River City fell silent as the sound of the starting bell echoed throughout its streets. Almost everyone's breathing quickened in anticipation as they stared intently at the magic mirrors lining the business district, afraid to miss a single moment of the upcoming struggle. Many players outside of White River City had pulled up Star Moon Kingdom's official forums to watch the live streams. For a moment, this competition had rendered the entire kingdom silent. The spectators in the auction arena itself tensed as they quietly watched the massive globe of water that had appeared above the arena. The gigantic globe displayed the qualifying rounds rules, which were unlike those of any competition previously held in the auction arena. The previous competitions had been fighting tournaments or betting matches between players. The rewards had been subpar, and very few players had been interested in taking part, although any player could join these competitions. However, since this competition involved the management rights to White River City's auction house, the system had set up a qualifying round before the official matches. Only those who passed the qualifiers could join the official struggle. If one failed to meet the requirements, all of the resources in the world couldn't help them. It's just a qualifying round, yet the participation fee is so high. The spectating players gasped when they saw the participation cost of one epic material. Epic materials were still incredibly rare among the various large guilds. An ordinary large guild would be fortunate to accumulate around 30 epic materials. Such items even had an extremely low drop rate in 100-man, hard mode team dungeons. Moreover, the main god system had reduced the drop rate to 0 for players that exceeded the dungeon's level limit to prevent players from abusing low-level team dungeons. Sending low-level members to grind these team dungeons was also useless for a guild. These players wouldn't be able to raid the dungeons even if their guilds gave them top-tier equipment. Team dungeons tested players' combat standards as well as their equipment standards, and it would be extremely foolish for a guild to have its members with high combat standards maintain low levels. As players reached higher levels in God's domain, they'd encounter more fortuitous opportunities. Instructing experts to remain at a lower level would ruin the guild and the player's development. Because of this, the various major powers had stockpiled very few epic materials. Yet, the auction arena charged one epic material per participant, and every participating power had brought at least several dozen members. However, despite the crowd's sentiments, more than 100 powers paid the participation fee. Starlink, in particular, paid for more than 400 participants. When they saw this, the spectators couldn't help but shudder. Even the independent players watching from outside of the auction house couldn't help but gape in shock. Everyone had known before this that the various superpowers shouldn't be provoked and possessed wealth that far surpassed first-rate guilds, but they were still blown away when they saw how many members the various superpowers had dispatched for this competition. Moreover, this was only for one city. Many of these superpowers were contesting for multiple cities. Superpowers could truly kill people with wealth alone. So, this is a superpower? Melody was even more distraught when she saw how many Starlink members would take part in this struggle. Setting aside its members' combat standards, the fact that Starlink had the financial strength to dispatch more than 400 players was enough to devastate second-rate guilds like Ninth Heaven. The competition for the auction house didn't operate like a fighting tournament. In the official competition, players would be evenly distributed onto 5 separate, spacious battlefields. Players would then have to slaughter each other and claim the energy crystals that would randomly fall from above. Whichever power had the most energy crystals at the end of the competition would secure the auction house's management rights. However, not only were players prohibited from using tools on the battlefield, but they were also banned from using large-scale spells. The main god system truly was intent on testing the participating powers' comprehensive strength. It didn't allow any trickery whatsoever. Although Zero Wing had dispatched 112 players to this competition, even more than top-ranked first-rate guilds like the Bloodbath Family and Holy Reincarnation, it paled in comparison to Starlink's 400-plus members. Moreover, King's Return had sent 300-plus members, Blackwater had dispatched 200-plus, and Pantheon had arrived with 200-plus members. None of these superpowers should be underestimated. The other superpowers were mostly here to watch, not planning to compete for White River City. So, they had only paid for a few members to participate for the experience. Although the various superpowers foundations had shocked the crowd, what happened next utterly stupefied everyone watching. Each of the qualifying round's participating players was teleported to an independent room, all of which had over a dozen trolls. The weakest of these trolls was a lord, while the strongest was a great lord, and each room had a total of 3 great lords. All of the trolls were level 65. Slightly higher than the participating player's average level. Players had to defeat 3 level 65 Great Lords and more than 10 level 65 Lords in the qualifying round. Even ordinary experts would flee from such a monster group, yet the system wanted them to survive against these monsters for 1 minute. To make matters worse, players couldn't use tools. Many of the expert players in the arena despaired when they saw how difficult this qualifying round would be. Is the system joking? The system must be crazy. I can't even last 30 seconds against 1 level 65 Great Lord, much less against 3 of them. At first, many of the watching experts had hated themselves for not having any epic materials and losing out on the perfect opportunity to make a name for themselves. But after seeing the qualifying rounds challenge, they were relieved. If they had paid to participate, they would have wasted an epic material for nothing. As expected of the auction house's struggle. This is amazing. The qualifying round already has such high standards. This trip here was definitely worth it. The standards are indeed quite high. I'm afraid that most of the participants will be disqualified during this round. Only those superpowers will have a significant number of experts make it to the true competition. The small guilds that are trying to make a name for themselves will likely be disappointed. Although aside from those superpowers, I'm fairly certain that the Dark Knight Empire's Bloodbath family, the Glory Empire's Holy Reincarnation, and the Purple Thorns Kingdom's Sin Realm will have quite a few members pass the qualifying round. That's probably true. Not only are those guilds supported by powerful corporations, but they also have plenty of expert members. Zero Wing really is unlucky. It should have had a fighting chance since it dispatched 40 or so more players than the participating first-rate guilds. But after this round, Zero Wing will likely have far fewer members in the official competition than the first-rate guilds. That's right. Although Zero Wing has been developing wonderfully recently, it hasn't had enough time to develop to a sufficient level. Its foundations simply cannot compare to veteran first-rate guilds. If Zero Wing had accepted some major company or corporation's investments, it would have likely been a match for guilds like the Bloodbath family and Sin Realm. Everyone talked about the competition's qualifying round. They all had guesses about how many players from the participating guilds would make it to the competition after this round. However, nobody questioned the various superpowers' performances, comparing the first-rate guilds' abilities instead. 1 minute passed quickly, and excited, everyone shifted their attention to the massive water globe hovering over the auction arena. They couldn't wait to see how the participating powers would perform. Thousand Light Family. 9 people passed. Blast Adventurer Team. 5 people passed. Bloodbath Family. 32 people passed. Star Alliance. 17 people passed. Sin Realm. 26 people passed. Holy Reincarnation. 35 people passed. King's Return. 237 people passed. Pantheon. 175 people passed. Blackwater. 204 people passed. Starlink. 339 people passed. Zero Wing. 107 people passed. Chapter 2087. Passing Rate. What's going on? I thought Zero Wing only sent 112 members. How did so many of them pass? The players in the auction arena stared with wide eyes when they saw how many Zero Wing members had made it through the qualifiers, unable to believe their eyes. The various major powers waiting for the official competition start were just as baffled. Impossible! The system must have made a mistake. Skyview practically shouted when he saw the numbers on the water globe. Zero Wing had only paid for 112 participating members in the qualifying round, yet 107 of them had made it through. This passing rate was absolutely horrifying. Only about 55% of the teams from top-ranked first-rate guilds like Bloodbath Family, Sin Realm, and Holy Reincarnation had passed the trial. Even then, it was impressive. Ordinary first-rate guilds like the Star Alliance only had a 40% passing rate. As for the various participating superpowers, even the best-performing guild, Blackwater, had only managed 88% of its team, yet 95% of Zero Wing's members had cleared the qualifying round, surpassing Blackwater. No matter how Skyview thought about the situation, he couldn't believe it. Superpowers had plenty of experts and detailed training programs that were particularly efficient when nurturing players. Ordinary powers simply couldn't compare. Moreover, the players that were powerful enough to be considered for this competition were the various powers experts among experts. Yet, Zero Wing had surpassed all of them. Skyview wasn't the only confused player. Not even the various major powers members could fathom how Zero Wing had built such a powerful foundation. Zero Wing is amazing. Its passing rate is even higher than those superpowers. Didn't they say that Zero Wing hasn't had enough time to develop, and its foundation regarding expert players is weak? Why do I feel like Zero Wing's expert foundation is even stronger than those top-ranked first-rate guilds? When the independent players watching from outside of the auction house saw Zero Wing's passing rate, they re-evaluated their opinions of the guild, especially the expert players from other kingdoms and empires. Based on the passing rates, it was, more or less, clear that Zero Wing's expert foundation was no weaker than top-ranked first-rate guilds. In fact, it might even be slightly stronger than its competition. The difference is actually so great? Galaxy Past was at a loss for words as he stared at the magic water globe. He had thought that the Star Alliance had a chance against Zero Wing's expert foundation. After developing for so long, the Star Alliance had grown considerably. Nowadays, God's Domain's popularity continued to increase, and more people joined the game every day. As a result, more experts continued to rise. Not only had the Star Alliance successfully nurtured a lot of experts, but it had also recruited experts from elsewhere. The guild was many times stronger than when it had joined God's Domain. However, only 40% of the Star Alliance's players had made it through the qualifying round, while 95% of Zero Wing's players had succeeded. No matter how Galaxy Past looked at it, the Star Alliance wasn't on the same playing field as Zero Wing. Meanwhile, when Melody, who watched from a private spectator room, saw the passing rates, the darkness in her eyes vanished. She couldn't help her growing excitement as if she had just seen a ray of hope illuminate a dark sky. However, despite Melody's elation, the half-elf man beside her remained unperturbed. "I'm assuming that you think Zero Wing now has some hope of holding White River City, right?" the half-elf man said as he glanced at Xueqi, who stood in the auction arena. "Unfortunately, that is still impossible. Zero Wing's passing rate is amazing, but no matter how many players made it through the last round, Zero Wing still only has 107 members participating in the official competition. Compared to the 4 participating superpowers, that is nothing. Even Pantheon, the superpower with the fewest members in the competition, has 68 more players than Zero Wing. At the end of the day, this competition is a test of a guild's comprehensive strength. Zero Wing might be able to deal with top-ranking first-rate guilds like the Bloodbath Family and Holy Reincarnation, but it doesn't have the power to contend with superpowers." But, although Melody wanted to argue, she knew his words were true when she saw how calmly the various superpowers members had reacted to Zero Wing's results. Even the various top-ranked first-rate guilds, whose members had been surprised to see Zero Wing's success a moment ago, regained their composure as they realized that the strength Zero Wing had displayed did nothing to change its circumstances. Meanwhile, an old man in black armor with a slightly hunched back stood at the lead of King's Returns team in the auction arena. After taking a look at the water globe, this old man smiled and turned to Mu Chung, who stood a short distance away. "Brother Mu, long time no see. I hadn't expected to see you in action again." "I certainly didn't expect to find you here," the hunchbacked man said, smiling. "You're here as well, so what's so strange about my presence?" Mu Chung asked the old man. Although his tone was disdainful, vigilance filled his gaze as he addressed the hunchbacked old man. He was vigilant because this man was one of King's Return's old monsters. He had risen to fame more than 3 decades ago, earning the nickname Blind Man. While his nickname sounded demeaning, the older generation's expert players knew it was by no means an insult. In fact, it was the highest form of praise. This old man was truly blind in the real world, but since virtual reality games connected to the brain directly, they allowed people with disabilities to function as if they had none in the game world. Naturally, those with sight disabilities could see normally in the game world. However, not only did Blind Man recover his sight in virtual reality games, but his sight was also far sharper than the ordinary person's. By relying on his superior sight, he had carved a place for himself in the virtual gaming world. The secret pavilion had even called him the all-seeing sword saint. Even when Mu Chung had been at his peak, he had only been able to win 4 out of 10 fights with Blind Man. "I've heard that you have a close relationship with Zero Wing. Is that true?" "Unfortunately, our King's Return has a little enmity with one of that guild's little fellows." "How about this? If you don't help Zero Wing, we won't target the guild," Blind Man asked, chuckling. Blind Man's suggestion rendered Mu Chung speechless. It seemed that Zero Wing wasn't satisfied with provoking superpowers like Starlink and Blackwater, but it had provoked King's Return as well. However, when Mu Chung saw that more than 200 people standing behind Blind Man and compared them to the dozen or so subordinates behind himself, he could not help but nod helplessly, replying, "Fine, it's a deal." Mu Chung then turned to look at the distant Xueqi and muttered to himself, "This is the most I can do to help you." When the various major powers members overheard the old men's conversation, they couldn't help but send Zero Wing sneers and looks of pity. Zero Wing is always so arrogant, provoking so many superpowers. Now, these superpowers want retribution. Ha ha ha. So what if more than 100 players from Zero Wing made it through the qualifiers? In the end, its efforts mean nothing. Now that Zero Wing had lost one of its capable supporters, its chances of holding White River City had fallen even further. Time passed quickly. After another 2 minutes, the qualifying players were distributed across 5 different battlefields. Each battlefield was the size of a small leveling map, easily accommodating tens of thousands of players. The rules for this competition were quite simple. The competition had a 3-hour time limit, and throughout its duration, energy crystals would randomly fall into the battlefield. The power that secured the most energy crystals after 3 hours would be crowned as the victor. When the bell rang throughout the 5 battlefields, the official competition began as every player in Star Moon Kingdom watched. Everyone, listen up. Prioritize Zero Wing's members above all others. When the competition began, the various major powers issued commands to target Zero Wing to curry favor with the various superpowers. I found some of Zero Wing's members here. Good. Get rid of them first. We'll fight for the energy crystals later. As soon as the major powers members discovered Zero Wings, they charged toward them. Zero Wing? Die! Skyview sneered when he saw the beauty observing her surroundings. He immediately charged at the woman from Zero Wing alongside a dozen or so of his subordinates. Chapter 2088. Suppressing enemies with one move. As the official competition began, Zero Wing's spectating members paled. The auction arena's competition should have been a free-for-all between the various participating superpowers, but now, almost every player targeted Zero Wing. These superpowers moved as if they had already made an agreement. How can this be? Melody, who watched the competition through a magic mirror, was utterly devastated as she watched the various powers experts work together against Zero Wing's members. Dealing with several superpowers in this competition was one thing. After all, the auction arena had 5 independent battlefields, and players would be randomly distributed across them. Combined, these hostile superpowers only had around 1,000 members in total, and after being split between 5 battlefields, their numbers thinned. Locating Zero Wing's members across such a large map wouldn't be easy with so few players. Moreover, victory in the auction arena didn't depend on the number of kills one had. Players simply needed to contest for the energy crystals that would appear. As long as Zero Wing avoided confrontation with these several superpowers and focused on securing energy crystals, it definitely had hope of securing White River City's auction house. However, that hope was dashed if those superpowers worked together. While the various powers might not have as many participating members as the various superpowers, when combined, they easily outnumbered the more powerful guilds by 3 or 4 times. Even if the battlefields were quite large, locating Zero Wing's members wouldn't be a challenge if all of these powers cooperated. I told you long ago that the various superpowers in God's domain are not as simple as you. Zero Wing has severely underestimated its enemies since the very beginning, as well. Zero Wing doesn't have the slightest chance of winning this competition, the half-elf man said calmly. This competition is simply Zero Wing's execution. Rather than military strength, the various superpowers' influence over lesser guilds was truly frightening. The various participating powers understood that they would reach greater heights instantly if they could curry favor with a superpower. This was also why the various powers had become jealous when they had learned that 2 superpowers backed Zero Wing. Normally, trying to gain a superpower support wasn't easy, but Zero Wing had presented the perfect opportunity to do just that. While the half-elf man expressed his opinion, Skyview and the dozen or so experts from other powers on battlefield number 4 closed in on the beautiful woman wearing a 6-winged emblem. The magic mirrors along the city's business district displayed the scene clearly. Ha! Isn't that Beauty Graceful Moon, the former Firecloud Fox Adventurer Team's vice commander? An expert from the Black Dragon Empire asked, recognizing the woman on the magic mirror immediately. She's Graceful Moon? I had heard that she used to be quite strong, only slightly off from becoming one of the top 100 summoners in the Black Dragon Empire. Many first-rate guilds had tried to recruit her. I had never thought that she would join Zero Wing. But she's not very lucky. A group of enemies spotted her right off the bat. She'll likely be the first person to disqualify from the competition, a level 63 male ranger said, sighing as he gazed at Graceful Moon's beauty. She's not just unlucky, she's extremely unlucky. Setting aside Sky View, one of Sin Realm's newly minted 10 great experts, the man and woman beside him are exceptional experts, a level 64 Guardian Knight commented. That glamorous woman is Elegant Insanity, one of Holy Reincarnation's rising geniuses. I've heard that she's the second-ranked assassin in her guild. If not for her lack of achievements, she would have ranked on the God's Domain experts list long ago. As for that stalwart, silver-armored man, he's Howling Earth, one of the Bloodbath family's top 4 berserkers. He also has the hidden class, Blood Rage Warrior. The lower his HP gets, the greater his combat power becomes. He previously defeated 2 experts from the God's Domain experts list. Those 2 working together would be enough to trouble a peak expert. Include the other powers experts, even a peak expert would have to flee. Everyone around the level 64 Guardian Knight gasped in shock. Even a superpowers peak experts would have to flee if they encountered such a force without support, not to mention Graceful Moon, who hadn't even ranked among the top 100 of her class in the Black Dragon Empire. When the spectating crowd discussed Graceful Moon's opponents, Skyview and his companions surrounded her. Die! Skyview shouted as the surrounding mana surged to him, increasing the intensity of his aura. He felt like a humanoid great lord. He then launched the Tier 2 curse, Violent Flame Spears at Graceful Moon, sending 28 fiery spears toward the woman from multiple directions. Howling Earth also shouted, and his muscles bulged as he leaped up with his giant warhammer raised. He swung his weapon down toward Graceful Moon like a mountain descending on the female summoner. In contrast, Elegant Insanity vanished, waiting patiently for an opportunity to land a fatal blow. The 3 experts cooperated as if they had fought together for many years. Their attack's timing was perfect, leaving Graceful Moon no room to dodge. As the warhammer and flame spears flew toward the level 65 summoner, Graceful Moon, who had stood motionless, finally made her move. She raised Fallen Language, her epic staff, and summoned a level 70, Great Lord-ranked steel-armed ape. At the same time, 3 level 70 Lord-ranked rock guardians appeared around her. The rock guardians were elemental creatures, so their innate magic resistance was quite high. The 3 rock guardians served as an impenetrable wall, stopping every incoming flame spear. The stead-armed ape stood 3 meters tall and was covered in golden magic circuits, which had been tattooed across its body. With arms thicker than its legs, the steel-armed ape swung at the descending warhammer. Boom! With the sound of an explosion, Howling Earth was thrown back. When he landed, he discovered that both of his arms had numbed. The steel-armed ape's strength definitely surpassed that of ordinary great lords. However, while Howling Earth had flown through the air, a black figure had appeared beside Graceful Moon. This figure was none other than Elegant Insanity. The snow-white dagger in her right hand silently slid toward Graceful Moon's throat like a cunning snake. Since Graceful Moon had just finished casting a spell and her physique as a summoner wasn't formidable, she had no defensive options to protect herself from Elegant Insanity's swift, silent attack. Just as everyone expected to see the assassin's attack land, a gigantic stone palm appeared above Elegant Insanity's head, descending on the female assassin like a falling mountain. She had no choice but to abandon her attack and evade. However, as Elegant Insanity tried to dodge the Rock Guardian's attack, the remaining 2 Rock Guardians attacked the assassin's blind spots as if they had prepared for this moment. Caught off guard, Elegant Insanity couldn't dodge or block any of the incoming attacks. Damn it! Elegant Insanity frowned. She immediately activated Wind Steps, using the brief moment of invulnerability to survive the attacks. Pang! Pang! With 2 muffled sounds, Elegant Insanity was thrown like a cannonball, only stopping after she crashed into a large tree. Although she didn't take any damage, a trace of fear flashed in her eyes when she looked at Graceful Moon. Against a coordinated attack from 3 powerful experts like herself, Skyview, and Howling Earth, even a peak expert would have to use a life-saving skill or face impending death. However, these 3 were actually at a disadvantage against Graceful Moon. The spectating players outside of the arena gaped in shock as they watched the events unfold. The Black Dragon Empire's experts, who were familiar with the female summoner, were particularly stunned. Was this female summoner the same Graceful Moon they knew? Chapter 2089. Shocking the whole arena, so strong. Zero Wing has hidden such a powerful expert. The first fight in Battlefield Number 4 astonished the crowd outside of the auction house. Seeing as how Graceful Moon smoothly stopped the incoming attacks from 3 experts, all of which ranked among the top in their top-ranked first-rate guilds, it was clear that her combat standards could definitely rival those of Superpower's peak experts. Within a superpower, every peak expert served as a vital support pillar, and the various first-rate guilds feared them all. A peak expert could single-handedly wipe out a 100-man team of ordinary experts. Smaller guilds had no hope of suppressing a peak expert without constricting their players to operate in teams of several hundred at the very least. Some peak experts who had chosen classes with high survivability could come and go as they pleased. She only recently joined Zero Wing, yet she's already grown so strong? Luafei, who watched from a second-floor spectator room, blinked in surprise as she stared at Graceful Moon incredulously. As the vice-commander of FFF, a top adventurer team in the Black Dragon Empire, Luafei had a certain familiarity with the Empire's well-known adventurer teams. Due to Graceful Moon's performance in the last ranking battle in the Empire, Luafei had made sure to pay extra close attention to her. However, Luafei remembered Graceful Moon displaying combat standards that hadn't even rivaled those of first-rate guilds peak experts, much less refinement realm experts like Skyview, Elegant Insanity, and Howling Earth. Yet, this female summoner suppressed all 3 refinement realm experts by herself. Graceful Moon's newfound strength shocked Luafei. Moreover, this situation wasn't like Luafei's defeat against Zhao Yueru during the ranking battles. Zhao Yueru had relied on superior basic attributes and spells to win, but as a true Void Realm expert, Luafei recognized that the same couldn't be said for Graceful Moon. Graceful Moon's success was simply a result of her impeccable ability to control her summoned creatures. Not only have her basic attributes risen, but her combat standards have skyrocketed as well. It seems Zero Wing still has some secrets, Yan Tianqing, FFF's commander, commented as he watched Graceful Moon with squinted eyes, a hit of surprise flashing in his gaze. After the FFF adventurer team had secretly joined the Flower of Seven Sins, the adventurer team's upper echelons had gained a lot of detailed information on the various superpowers. Hence, Yan Tianqing understood how frightening they truly were. Their ability to nurture experts, in particular, was truly amazing. Other powers simply couldn't compete. As a peak expert that had risen to fame in the virtual gaming world many years ago and was only a short distance away from reaching the domain realm, Yan Tianqing recognized that Graceful Moon's current combat standards were quite powerful. Only, her strength was atypical. Normally, players tried to gain more control of their own bodies and their familiarity with the world around them to increase their combat standards. But Graceful Moon felt as if she were actively using the world itself to her benefit. While everyone was shocked over her performance, the female summoner in question began to chant another spell. As she did, her staff started to glow with a dazzling purple light. Tier 2 Curse, Life Link. This curse linked the player with their summoned creatures, sharing their senses. Although the curse lowered the player's basic attributes by 50%, it increased the linked summoned creature's basic attributes by 20% of the player's normal attributes. Suddenly, golden magic circuits flashed on the steel-armed ape and rock guardians as their auras became even more intense. Before anyone could react, the 4 summoned creatures exploded into action and charged at Graceful Moon's enemies. 2 of the Lord-ranked rock guardians effortlessly dispersed the dozen or so attacking experts. The 3rd rock guardian remained by its summoner's side, repelling all incoming attacks. Meanwhile, the steel-armed ape charged toward Howling Earth, pummeling the hammer-wielding Blood Rage warrior. After the steel-armed ape's first hit landed, Howling Earth's arms were numb, and the ground beneath him had cracked. The second hit numbed the Blood Rage warrior's entire body, substantially decreasing his reaction speed. Howling Earth had no power to respond to the steel-armed ape's 3rd attack, taking the strike with his shoulders and sinking into the ground past his knees. With the 4th hit, the summoned creature hammered Howling Earth completely into the ground. On the 5th hit, Howling Earth died, becoming the first disqualified player from Battlefield Number 4. Skyview and his comrades were dumbfounded. Their group's healers didn't even have time to finish casting their spells before the steel-armed ape killed Howling Earth. The summoned creature's strength was simply horrific. As one of Bloodbath family's top-ranked berserkers, Howling Earth had unbound his weapons and equipment to level 60 Dark Gold rank before entering the battlefield. Only, he hadn't unbound his epic weapon completely. To unbind an epic item to its normal rank on the battlefield, one had to pay 3 epic materials. On the other hand, restoring all of one's weapons and equipment to dark gold rank only cost 5 epic materials. Meanwhile, a full set of level 60 dark gold equipment was more than enough to grant Howling Earth the strength of a high lord of the same level. Even without a healer, he should be able to contend with a great lord of the same level for quite some time. Yet, a level 70, Great Lord-ranked steel-armed ape had killed Howling Earth in just 5 moves. Moreover, the steel-armed ape hadn't used any techniques or skills. It had relied on brute force to kill its enemy. Damn it! How many epic items does she have on her? Elegant Insanity stared at the female summoner in astonishment. At first, the steel-armed ape had only displayed enough strength to make Howling Earth stumble, but after receiving 20% of Graceful Moon's basic attributes, its strength had increased so drastically. Since the steel-armed ape hadn't used any skills thus far, Graceful Moon's basic attributes must be so incredibly high that a mere 20% was enough to give a level 70 steel-armed ape the strength of a level 65 Grand Lord. Before its enemies recovered from their shock, the steel-armed ape charged toward the nearby group. With the exception of Skyview and Elegant Insanity, the summoned creature killed every expert with 2 hits. However, the 2 peak experts didn't fare much better. Skyview died after 4 punches, and Elegant Insanity only survived until the 7th. In less than 30 seconds, the various major powers experts, who had tried to gang up on Graceful Moon, fell under the female summoner's retaliation. None of them had been able to fight back. This outcome stunned the watching crowd, but they also considered it reasonable. Players weren't allowed to use berserk skills in the arena, and without those skills, how were they supposed to fight a Grand Lord under another player's control? Zero Wing is insane. It dumped so many resources onto Graceful Moon. In my opinion, I think Zero Wing's decision was a wise one. At the very least, with a Grand Lord on its side, no ordinary power can eliminate Zero Wing. The crowd fell into a heated debate over Graceful Moon's strength. They had never expected Zero Wing to pull such a move. With this, Zero Wing should acquire plenty of energy crystals in Battlefield number 4. Zero Wing certainly has a lot of clever tricks, the half-elf man beside Melody said, sneering at Graceful Moon through a magic mirror. However, while pouring its resources into a few select experts will allow them to perform well, what could a small number of players hope to accomplish on such large battlefields? Each battlefield would spawn 3 to 6 energy crystals at set intervals. As long as players held the crystals for 10 minutes, their ownership would become permanent, not even dropping if the player died. As the half-elf man finished speaking, easily more than 300 players were teleported back to the auction arena, in one group after another. An uproar tore through the auction arena's crowd. What's wrong with those people? The half-elf man turned to the ruckus in the stands in confusion. While most of the participating powers worked together against Zero Wing's members, there were bound to be exceptions. Seeing a large number of players return at the same time shouldn't be surprising. But when the half-elf man raised his eyes to the magic mirrors displaying the fights in other battlefields, his expression froze. Impossible! The several dozen magic mirrors in the center of the auction arena all displayed battles involving Zero Wing's members. Some of these Zero Wing players fought 2 or 3 opponents at the same time, while others faced more than 10. Every one of Zero Wing's members displayed combat standards that could rival Refinement Realm experts. Moreover, they all showed off their extraordinarily high basic attributes. The expert players that had returned from the battlefields were Zero Wing's victims. Chapter 2090. Ant blood, dust, and smoke filled the gigantic magic mirror screens as they hovered above the arena. Corpses, what remained of the various major powers experts, littered the battlefield, while Zero Wing's members remained standing. However, despite their success, Zero Wing's members seemed incredibly calm as if they had only slain mobs along the roadside. This scene shocked the upper echelons and expert players from the several hundred spectating major powers. Zero Wing's members had killed over 300 of the various major powers' top experts without breaking a sweat, and contrary to expectations, the responsible party didn't just include a dozen or so players. Rather, several dozen players were responsible for this slaughter. This is interesting. Mu Chung, who was assigned to Battlefield No. L, could not help but smile at the magic mirror above the battlefield. Even he had assumed that Zero Wing was doomed to part with White River City's auction house. He had never imagined that Zero Wing had such a sturdy foundation. On an ordinary battlefield, having a small number of powerful players that could defeat multiple players at once would be wonderful, but this was the auction arena. Players' goal here was to obtain energy crystals, so it was best to have as many capable experts as possible. At most, the various major powers would admire Zero Wing's battle strategy after watching Graceful Moon kill over a dozen experts by herself. It had merely been a clever trick to these guilds, proving nothing. However, now that several dozen Zero Wing members had performed similarly, the various major powers were beginning to feel afraid. The fact that Zero Wing could dispatch several dozen extremely powerful experts was proof of the guild's solid foundations. If Zero Wing had so many powerful experts, annihilating any of their guilds would likely be a piece of cake. Furthermore, so many experts meant that Zero Wing had the strength to fight the various superpowers for White River City's auction house. If Zero Wing held this auction house and eventually grew into a superpower, the powers that had opposed the guild today would suffer. How can a guild that only established after God's Domain's launch have so many powerful experts and epic resources? Dust Blood, who had been assigned to Battlefield Number 3, glowered as he watched 8 of his guildmates return to the auction arena. Outsiders might not know these 8 players, but he, as the leader of Bloodbath family's team for this competition, did. To prepare for this auction house competition, the guild had invested over half of its epic material stock to allow 32 participants to restore their weapons and equipment to Dark Gold rank. However, not only had Zero Wing dispatched more than twice as many players to the official competition, but every participant had unbound their weapons and equipment to Dark Gold rank at the very least. Based on what Dustblood could see, quite a few Zero Wing members had even restored their equipment to epic rank. Not even the Bloodbath family and Holy Reincarnation could afford such an expenditure. Among the 8 slain Bloodbath family members, 2 were even bona fide refinement realm experts. Even in a superpower, these players would be treated as core members. But despite working with other powers in this competition, Zero Wing's players had defeated them. Moreover, the Zero Wing members responsible weren't even the guild's famous experts. Rather, they were just some of Zero Wing's main force members. Dust Blood couldn't believe it. Meanwhile, after watching more than 300 of their experts die, the various major powers dismissed the notion of targeting Zero Wing. They had only gone after the guild's members to curry favor with the various superpowers watching, but not only hadn't they defeated Zero Wing, but their actions might have also provoked a future superpower. Continuing to single out Zero Wing's members would be foolish. They had only spent so many resources to participate in the auction arena to prepare for the competitions in their own territories once their auction houses were promoted. Order quickly returned to the 5 battlefields as players began to clash with each other, competing for the descending energy crystals. Unless an energy crystal was at stake, the various major powers experts avoided Zero Wing's members as much as possible. For a time, Zero Wing's members moved across their battlefields with ease. The spectating crowd fell silent as they recognized this turn of events. Meanwhile, the Zero Wing members watching the competition grew excited. They all wished they were on those battlefields, as well. The various major powers that had visited Star Moon Kingdom had treated Zero Wing like dirt in the past. None of them had seen anything special about the kingdom's ruling guild. However, these foreign powers now bowed their heads, doing the best they could to avoid Zero Wing's attention. Wonderful! Without the other powers' interference, Zero Wing can safely compete for the energy crystals. Melody exclaimed as she watched Zero Wing's members traverse the 5 battlefields unhindered. Although Zero Wing didn't have as many members in the competition as the various superpowers, the energy crystals appeared randomly across all 5 battlefields. Without the various major powers' interference, Zero Wing would have an easier time fighting the participating superpowers for energy crystals. Compete for the energy crystals? Evil Judgment, the half-elf man beside Melody, laughed suddenly. What are you trying to say? Melody frowned as his reaction. She didn't think that Evil Judgment laughed at her out of envy, but due to her ignorance. With how important an auction house is to a guild, do you think the various superpowers will let anyone lesser compete? Evil Judgment asked as he gestured to the energy crystals falling into the 5 battlefields. The answer is a definite no. No tiger would allow an ant to contest for its territory. Naturally, the various superpowers won't allow insignificant players to take advantage of their fights between each other. Melody turned back to the magic mirrors displaying the battlefields, and what she saw darkened her expression. The 4 participating superpowers, which despised Zero Wing, had surrounded the first 5 energy crystals on each of the 5 battlefields. Each superpower had reserved 3 to 5 players to guard the energy crystals, working together to prevent other powers from approaching. How can this be? Melody was stunned. If only one superpower stood in their way, the various major powers wouldn't likely consider it much of a threat. When combined, they had an overwhelming numerical advantage. If they worked together, a lone superpower couldn't stop them. However, 4 superpowers were working together. Although each had only dispatched a small number of players to protect the energy crystals, these experts were extraordinarily powerful. Even working together, the various major powers had little hope of breaking past that blockade. The various major powers only outnumbered the 4 superpowers by 3 or 4 times. Such a small advantage wasn't enough to defeat the 4 cooperating superpowers. Moreover, if they annoyed these superpowers, they might set aside their competition and focus on the interfering players. If the 4 superpowers got serious, they could end these major powers. Knowing that such an outcome was possible, the various major powers wouldn't dare attack the superpowers. However, if the major powers did not act, Zero Wing wouldn't have any opportunities to take advantage of. I want to see just how you intend to hold White River City now, Zero Wing. Sky View roared with laughter when he saw the 4 superpowers cooperate. With them working together, one of these superpowers was guaranteed to win this auction arena competition. The other powers could only watch from the sidelines or declare themselves these superpowers' enemy. But who would dare attracted 4 superpowers' wrath? Yet, when everyone thought that no one would dare attack these 4 superpowers' blockade, several figures on battlefield number 1 dashed past the various major powers players and straight toward one of the energy crystals. So fast. Who are those people? Have they lost their minds? I thought I saw them wearing a 6-winged emblem. A 6-winged emblem? Isn't that Zero Wing's emblem? Chapter 2091. What if I refuse? The crowd the various major powers experts had formed some distance away from the energy crystal shuddered when they realized that the 5 new arrivals were from Zero Wing. The players watching from outside of the arena gaped in shock. Unlike the experts on the battlefield, they had a clear view of Zero Wing's 5 members rapidly approaching the fallen energy crystal. Isn't that Black Flame? That can't be, can it? 4 superpowers are working together to guard that crystal. How could Black Flame dare to attack them? Has Black Flame lost his mind? He's charging in with only 4 companions. That's not enough to face a single superpower, much less 4. Does Black Flame really treat superpowers experts like ordinary experts from other guilds? Maybe this is his final stand. White River City is Zero Wing's main headquarters, and without it, at least half of Zero Wing's operations will be crippled. Zero Wing's behavior baffled everyone watching. No one had ever thought that Zero would make such a bold move. However, before Xueqi's group could get within 100 yards of the crystal, 17 figures appeared in their path. These 17 players gave off a soul-shuddering aura, and every one of them felt like a humanoid great lord. Even the major powers experts who stood some distance away felt stifled as these players' intense killing intent washed over them. These 17 players wore a mix of level 60 and level 65 dark gold equipment. Some among them even bore level 60 dark gold set equipment and weapons. Moreover, they had fully restored these items' ranks. Am I dreaming? Isn't that the level 60 Eternal Knight set for assassins? Amazing! That berserker is wearing the Passionate set. I've heard that even Holy Reincarnation has only collected 3 pieces of that set. So, this is a superpowers foundation. The watching independent and guild players watching gasped when they saw the 4 superpowers members that hadn't bothered to hide their weapons and equipment's glow effect. Most of the game's large guilds hadn't even collected a complete level 60 fine gold set equipment thus far. Only top-ranked first-rate guilds would have a few sets. As for a complete level 60 dark gold set equipment, that was utterly beyond the various large guilds' reach. Level 60 dark gold set equipment could only be obtained by raiding 100-man hell mode team dungeons or super large-scale hard mode team dungeons. Moreover, the drop rate in these dungeons was only around 3%. Super large-scale Hell Mode team dungeons had a slightly higher drop rate, but it still wasn't higher than 7%. Most first-rate guilds at this stage of their game hit their limit with level 60, 100-man Hell Mode team dungeons. They simply didn't have the power to raid super large-scale Hell Mode team dungeons. To the various large guilds, level 60 Dark Gold set equipment was godly right now. Yet, these 4 superpowers had more than one such set equipment. Why wouldn't this revelation be shocking? Anyone who takes another step forward dies. The level 65 male berserker in the passionate set slowly stated, word by word, as he watched Xueqi's group without joy or despair. This berserker sounded like an emotionless robot. As soon this berserker spoke, the surrounding temperature dropped as an intense killing intent suppressed the space around him. It felt as if the gates to hell had just opened, and if any of these players took another step, they'd descend into hell itself. The distant experts shuddered as they felt the abrupt change. Is he really human? His killing intent is so powerful. Melody's expression darkened as she stared at the imposing berserker. Unlike the spectating players in the stands or outside of the auction house, those in spectator rooms could alter their room's environment to match that of the battlefields, allowing them to experience the battlefields to a certain extent. Melody had encountered plenty of experts in the fairy country, including quite a few that made her feel utterly powerless. However, none of these experts exuded as much killing intent as that berserker. Human? You can't consider him human anymore, Evil Judgment answered from beside Melody, shaking his head. Chuckling, he continued, I had never imagined that Starlink would successfully recruit that cold-blooded monster. With him, Zero Wing doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell of securing the energy crystal. Is he really that strong? Black Flame earned his title as the Sword King from the Secret Pavilion, Melody countered. Sword King. Evil Judgment laughed. Only first-rate and weaker guilds give that title any importance. The Secret Pavilion has recorded a lot of experts on the God's Domain experts list, but there are many more players that have slipped through the cracks. That cold-blooded monster is one of them. He's called Tengu, the Warring Ghost. Although Tengu hasn't reached the Domain realm yet, his brain doesn't work like everyone else's. You could say that his brain is particularly well developed, granting him a similar sixth sense to wild beasts. He can easily predict his opponent's movements. There's also his beast-like combat method to contend with. He is no weaker than Domain realm monsters. He's already killed more than 10,000 experts in God's Domain, including many peak experts from superpowers. However, due to his strange and violent nature, none of the superpowers have tried to recruit him. He's killed more than 10,000 experts? Melody was slightly stunned. She had only defeated several hundred experts since joining God's Domain. Even so, those fights had earned her plenty of combat experience, but the Warring Ghost had slain more than 10,000, and many of them had been superpowers peak experts. He was truly a monster. To make matters worse, this monster wore the Passionate set, one of the best sets available in the game right now. When the various superpowers members saw Warring Ghost intercept Xueqi's small group, they began to chat about the upcoming fight. Brother Mu, it seems Zero Wing has no hope of success in Battlefield number 1, Blind Man commented as he glanced at Mu Chang, who stood a short distance away. He had heard much about the Warring Ghost, Tengu. If that man continued to grow stronger, he would undoubtedly reach the 4 Shadow Demons level. Although Black Flame was quite strong as well, the swordsman's strength should, at most, rival Tengu's. However, there were 4 other Zero Wing members present, while Tengu had a total of 17 allies. Zero Wing had no chance of reaching the energy crystal, much less claiming it. Starlink has truly invested a lot of its resources in this competition. Mu Chung shook his head and sighed when he saw these players. Even Mu Chung would struggle in a fight with Tengu. The weakest piece Tengu wore was level 65 Dark Gold rank, and he carried 2 pieces of epic equipment and an epic weapon. The Berserker's equipment was likely some of the very best God's Domain had to offer right now. Zero Wing's Black Flame. A beautiful woman in dark purple robes and wearing King's Returns Guild emblem muttered as she observed Xueqi. Smiling, she continued, although it is impressive that you've ranked so highly on the God's Domain experts list, this isn't a realm Zero Wing can reach. It'd be best if you left. Even if Nature Hall or Unyielding Soul step in to help you, Tengu will act without hesitation. The major powers experts watching from nearby nodded in agreement with this woman's warning. Although Zero Wing had surprised everyone with its strength, proving that it was even more powerful than a top-ranked first-rate guild. It couldn't compare to a superpower. If Zero Wing hadn't had Nature Hall and unyielding soul support, the 4 allied superpowers would have likely attacked by now. You Zero Wing players should know what's good for you. Do you think you could have survived this long if we had moved against you early in this competition? A level 65 ranger from Starlink said, sneering at Xueqi. What if I refuse? Xueqi asked with a calm smile. He then took a step forward.